It's a beautiful afternoon, and Dana Marchetti and her brother Paul are taking full advantage with a hike off Rampart Range Road, just outside the city of Colorado Springs.
Rampart Range Road was a really nice place. You're out in the woods, you can go and look at the views and stuff like that. If you went to the north, you could go up towards a whole bunch of hiking, and then if you kind of went down towards Rampart Range Reservoir, you could ride bikes there, and that road would take you all the way down into Garden of the Gods in Colorado Springs. It kind of centers Pikes Peak, you know, like you would see in a picture frame almost. It's just right there, and it feels very close because of the angle. It's just a really nice place to view the mountain.
It's amazing out here.
Wait until you see Pikes Peak.
My sister Dana lived here, and we came down for a visit. First time I've been in Colorado Springs in my life. We just had a baby about 7 months ago, and we thought we'd bring the new fam down and see the sights in Colorado Springs because we'd never been here, so that's what we were doing here. It seemed like a nice day to go do something, so we decided on a drive. Dana suggested Rampart Range Road. There was a couple of overlooks that we could stop at and see Pikes Peak and just sort of kind of get a feel for things, especially in an area we've never been to. And Pikes Peak is, you know, it's pretty spectacular, so it seemed like a good idea at the time.
Dana, come here.
What?
What is that?
I looked over and
Oh my God.
I was like, wow, whoa.
We need to call someone.
In my mind, there wasn't any doubt. As I approached the retaining wall, took in Pikes Peak, and then looked, there was what appeared to be an African-American, hands were behind his back, bound with a belt, and he had a t-shirt bag or a Walmart bag over his head. And he looked a little bit inflated, almost like it was a doll or something, and that's when I turned and said to Dana, "Hey, come over here." It was a little bit surreal. You know, here you are in a nice mountain setting, and you're supposed to be seeing all things beautiful, and here is this sort of anomaly in the middle of everything that's out of place.
Let's go.
We had a dead body in front of us. It's a memory that's etched in my brain. That's one of those things I'll never forget.
Within the hour, investigators from the El Paso County Sheriff's Office are on the scene.
Dispatch, it's an I-7.
1490, Roger.
Afternoon, Detective Hatch.
Hey, Jeff, you first on scene?
Yes, sir.
Murders occur sometimes very close to the city-county line. This particular case, there was no doubt. It is well outside of the city limits of Colorado Springs. It falls in the jurisdiction of the El Paso County Sheriff's Department.
All right, what are we looking at?
A couple people found a body at the bottom of the embankment over here.
Maybe a hiker took a spill?
I don't think so. You'll see when we get over there. Coroner's here already.
All right, well, let's take a look.
I know Detective Hatch fairly well. He was a good detective. He was dogged. He would stay on something.
Detective Hatch makes his way down the embankment carefully so he can closely examine the remains.
Hey, guys. Good God.
He's quite disturbed by what he sees.
A black male, a plastic sack taped at the neck. There was a blue blanket partially wrapped around him. His wrists were bound behind him and some sort of strap around his ankles.
Definitely not a fallen hiker. Any idea how long this guy's been down here, Bowerman?
The body's pretty swollen, but I'm not seeing a lot of skin discoloration. Less than 24 hours.
How about what killed him?
No obvious wounds, but we're waiting to see what's under this back.
It was apparent that this person had been brutally beaten. His face was swollen beyond identification.
Any wallet or other ID lying around?
Negative, no clothes, nothing.
Did you see any footprints when you first came in the area, Jeff?
No blood, no prints, no indication of anything.
Now, it's apparent this did not happen at this location. This is a disposal site of human remains.
Okay, well, let's continue to scan the area for evidence. In the meantime, I want to take a look up there.
So detectives started walking up towards the top of the overlook.
Are you seeing anything? Hey, wait a minute. Check that out.
Drag marks.
Yep.
My initial assumption was this is its appearance of a body being dragged and the heels dragging on the ground.
Look familiar?
They noticed little pieces of this blue Afghan blanket that was found wrapped around the body.
Looks like you got your hands full with this one.
Yeah. We're not gonna get anywhere unless we ID this guy.
The first step in any murder case is who got murdered. That gives you a place to begin.
I think I'm gonna need a little help on this one.
Yeah, just keep me in the loop once the guy's booked. Okay, thanks.
In 1996, I had spent 23 years and change on the police department, which equates to 106 years of doing anything else. And I was thinking I was eligible to retire the coming August. My wife had been pestering me at great length about her unhappiness with me still doing what I'm doing. On call, never home, working all the time. She'd had enough, and I knew that. And I was guilty of that because I did know it. But I was really thinking about not continuing past August of that year. I hadn't made the decision, but I was getting close.
It's Kenda.
Hey, Joe, Rich Hatch from the sheriff's office. How are you?
Hey, Rich. I'm all right.
So the sheriff's detectives contact me directly and say, are we missing a black male, approximately 20 years old? They do so because we carry most of the missing persons reports in the jurisdiction.
Do you have the victim's fingerprints?
Yeah. You think you can have you guys run them for me?
I'll have the lab make a priority.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate that.
While Kenda does his part to help, Detective Hatch hopes the autopsy will reveal more clues about the victim's cause of death.
Once I got the blood cleaned off of him, I had a better sense of his injuries. The beating was more vicious than I thought.
Under crime scene conditions, with dirt and poor light and all the things that accompany looking at someone in the wild who's been killed and thrown off an embankment, you're unable to see a great deal. But put him in a morgue, remove the bindings, they can see external damage to the body that was not seen at the scene.
The victim had suffered numerous skull fractures and lacerations around the head and the face area. The coroner ruled that these injuries were caused by some type of blunt force object.
Any idea what the instrument was?
No, it could be a number of things, but whatever it was about a ½ inch in diameter. It did severe damage.
He was hit with great force and further had a series of subdural hematomas to the brain, which caused his death.
His neck seems to be pretty bruised as well. Any evidence of strangulation?
Oh yeah, the hyoid bone was completely crushed, but the strangulation occurred after death.
Whoever did this is incredibly violent and incredibly dangerous. There's an enormous amount of overkill. There is a rage factor when you beat someone so severely that they die. Your intent is not just to kill them, but to punish them.
With the cause of death confirmed, Detective Hatch checks in on Kenda's progress.
Hey, Joe. Any luck on that missing persons?
Unfortunately not. However, we did get a hit on the print.
We determined that the victim is 21 years of age, and his name is Derek James.
You look him up?
Yeah, check this out.
Wow.
When the victim, Derek, was identified through the database, it also revealed that he had an extensive criminal history.
Criminal trespassing, aggravated theft, breaking and entering, violation of probation, the list goes on.
Looks like he got out of prison pretty recently.
He's only been out of the penitentiary for 60 days, and it wasn't his first hit. This kid's been around the block at age 21.
I'm sure he hung around with a pretty tough crowd.
There's an old expression, if you lay down with dogs, you get fleas. And maybe there's a flea who decides that Derek needs to go away. We are assisting the Sheriff's Department in an investigation of a disposed homicide victim found over an overlook on the Rampart Range Road. We've identified him as Derek James. In our records, we discover someone listed as a foster father whose name is Jimmy Ayers, and he lives in the city of Colorado Springs.
Excuse me, I'm looking for Jimmy Ayers.
Well, you're in luck. You found him. What can I do for you?
Jimmy Ayers is Derek's legal foster parent, and that is a really noble position because you understand that this young person doesn't have anybody else.
I'm Detective Hatch from the Sheriff's Office. Do you know Derek James?
Yeah, I'm his foster father. What do you do now?
They need somebody to guide them and to mentor them and kind of help them through life because they don't have anybody else to depend on.
Is there someone we can talk?
Yeah.
Mr. Ayers, I'm afraid I have some bad news. I'm sorry to say Derek is dead.
What?
Mr. Ayers is shocked by this information.
We found his body out on Rampart Range Road.
I'll be damned. I really thought that boy was heading down the right path this time.
Jimmy Ayers really thought Derek was turning his life around, and so it was extra sad for him to find out that he had been murdered this way.
Mr. Ayers, how long have you been his foster parent?
Since junior high.
Derek's mother had actually died in prison, and his father was in prison. I think it might be difficult for some people who have had a stable life to really understand what it means to be a young person and have to move from house to house, never knowing who you were going to live with, foster family to foster family. You have no roots. You have no stability in your life where you have people you can really count on. And so you could see where you might turn to a life of crime or get involved in drugs or hang around people that, you know, probably aren't the best people to be hanging around with. And because he really didn't have any parents or family, he finally became a ward of the state in Colorado.
The boy had a tough go at it. In and out of prison. But I really thought he was committed to changing his life this time.
Derek was trying to turn his life around and had enrolled in a program that helped mentor young offenders to try to not make the same mistakes that he did.
When's the last time you saw Derek?
DJ. Everyone calls him DJ.
DJ.
It was a couple of days ago. He came by, I fed him, and we talked about him getting a job. He left the next day, saying he was going to his girlfriend's house.
And I haven't seen him since.
Girlfriend, what's her name?
I really don't know. It's hard to keep up with all the girlfriends he has.
One of the things that Jimmy says about Derek is that he knows how to turn the charm on, always has a girlfriend or two.
Perhaps one of these girlfriends would know what happened to him or whose wrong side did he get on.
Okay. Well, thank you for your time, Mr. Ayers, and I'm very sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
So the next best thing to do is to find out who is the most recent girlfriend of DJ.
But before Detective Hatch can dig any deeper into Derek James's personal life, he's hit with some interesting news.
Detective Hatch,
What's up to you?
a girl just dropped by wanting to talk about that murder up on Rampart Range Road.
Really? She's still here?
Yeah, she's waiting for you in the conference room.
Thanks.
This woman says her street name is Bambi and that she knows DJ and she knows who killed him. Well, that's pretty significant.
I understand you may have some information about what happened with Derek James.
Yeah.
Are you his girlfriend?
No, but we've been friends for a long time. And I know the guy he was recently beefing with.
Bambi told investigators that after he got out of prison on this last stint, he had a run-in with an old acquaintance.
His name is Sam Fuller. Everybody call him Trip.
Bambi advised that at one time, Derek and Tripp had been pretty good friends.
And what happened between DJ and Trip?
She says they got into it over the affections of a girl. And that is a very common motive in murder.
Do you know where Trip lives?
Yeah, but you can't tell him I told you anything. I don't want to get killed.
It's okay. You have my word.
With a new lead to pursue, Detective Hatch heads to the home of Sam Fuller, a.k.a. Trip.
Yeah. Mr. Fuller, we're detectives from the Sheriff's Office. You mind stepping out in the hall?
So what exactly do you guys want?
He's perplexed. Why are the police at my house? I've done nothing wrong.
Mr. Fuller, we're here to talk about Derek James.
DJ? I haven't seen that boy in a minute.
Well, that's not what we heard.
What you mean?
Trip, do you know how Derek James ended up dead?
Dead? You saying somebody killed him? What happened?
Tripp was quite surprised at that. The emotion was genuine. You could tell that he really did not know that Derek had been killed.
He says to the sheriff's detectives, I don't know why my name came up in this.
But when you haven't seen somebody for a long time and all of a sudden police are asking you about his murder, you'd be like, wait a minute, how'd they get my name? How are they figuring that I'm involved? Is somebody trying to set me up for this?
So you're saying you and DJ did not have an issue over a girl?
Nah, man, we used to go running together and chase the same girls or whatever, but I don't hang with those people no more.
He admits they've been in and out of jail together on a number of occasions, but in the recent past, Sam Fuller straightened out his life, and he said, I don't do that anymore.
Okay. You have any kind of alibi for the last few days?
Yeah, I sure do. I've been working. You can call my boss.
You want to check on that?
I use the phone in here?
Yeah.
Hey, Trip. Well, you said you haven't seen DJ in a while, but do you know if he had any girlfriends?
Girlfriends? DJ was a dog, man. But last I heard, he was seeing this one girl.
He said, somebody told me that his main squeeze these days is a female named Sheila Barnhart.
Sheila Barnhart. Any idea where she lives?
Nah, man, I never met her before.
All checks out.
So they dismiss Mr. Fuller and assume that Bambi is telling a tale. There is a significant number of people who live in the criminal subculture who see Crime Stoppers as a piggy bank. Let's make a phone call, maybe they'll give us $20. In their minds, the police will pay for information. That is true, to an extent that's true, but only for the best information. That's what leads to arrest and conviction. We don't pay for rumors. We don't pay for your opinion. We pay for something when it works, and not until it works.
Thank you, Mr. Fuller. Appreciate your time.
So their focus now is on Sheila Barnhart. Who is she, and what does she know?
Detective Hatch and his partner waste little time tracking down an address.
Can I help you?
When this woman answers the door, she's wearing rubber cleaning gloves, and she is perspiring.
Excuse me, ma'am. We're looking for Sheila Barnhart.
They get the deer in headlights look from her, and she stammers and says, well...
Sheila, she's not here. I'm her sister, Stephanie.
And they look over her shoulder, and this apartment is filled with cleaning products.
What are you doing in there, Stephanie?
Just cleaning.
Yeah, I can see that. You missed a spot?
Well, my. Blood spatter on the ceiling only gets there one way. Cast off from a blood instrument. What's been happening in here? Did Derek James happen in here? The Sheriff's Department's investigating the brutal death of Derek James. They're in an apartment that's supposed to contain his most recent girlfriend, Sheila Barnhart, but they find her sister, Stephanie, cleaning up what appears to be a crime scene.
From what the investigators were able to observe just from the front door, that gave them probable cause to ask for a warrant for the search of this house.
Officer, check under that carpet.
When people try to clean up blood stains, a lot of times they'll use bleach. But you pull the carpet up, the blood is still underneath the carpet on the floor.
You come get this. There. Luminol ready yet?
Give me just a second.
Luminol is a chemical that causes human blood to fluoresce. It will even cause invisible to the human eye blood to fluoresce.
All right, luminol's ready.
Okay, kill the lights, please.
This apartment glows in the dark. This place is covered in blood.
You could see the efforts of where it had tried to be cleaned up, but it was just so much that that wasn't working.
I found this on the couch.
Well, I'll be damned.
CSI had located some pieces of fuzzy blue material which matched the blue Afghan that was found on the victim's body.
You don't have to be Sherlock Holmes to realize that this is where Derek James met his untimely demise. So Stephanie's in this up to her neck.
Okay, Stephanie, it's time for you to tell me what the hell is going on here.
I don't actually know.
And why are you cleaning up a crime scene?
So last night, my sister Sheila called me and she was freaking out, said something had happened to DJ and begged me to come over.
Was DJ here when you arrived?
No, but there was blood all over the couch.
She was shocked at how much blood there was. And she said Sheila looked emotionally distraught to the maximum.
Did Sheila tell you what happened to DJ?
She just said something bad.
Well, something bad did happen to DJ, Stephanie, because DJ happens to be very dead right now.
I didn't ask questions. I didn't want to know.
Where is Sheila now?
I couldn't get her to calm down, so I sent her back to my place. I told her I'd meet her there when I was finished.
Okay, Stephanie, we're gonna have to put you under arrest.
What? No, I didn't do anything. I was just trying to help.
And that makes you an accessory to murder.
No,
Officer.
One of the elements of being an accessory is the attempt to destroy or conceal evidence. And Stephanie is in the process of doing precisely that.
After Stephanie is booked on accessory charges, investigators set their sights on her sister, Sheila.
The sheriff's department goes to Stephanie's apartment, and as advertised, Sheila Barnhart is present. She's placed in custody because Sheila has a few things to explain, not the least of which is a dead guy on her sofa.
Okay, Sheila. This is your chance to come clean about whatever happened at your place the other night.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay. Well, let me catch you up to speed. There's mountains of blood evidence all over your home suggesting that you and your sister killed Derek James.
That isn't what happened. I didn't kill DJ.
Okay. Then who did?
I don't know. But I can explain.
Then start explaining, Sheila, because you kind of need to explain.
So the other night, I got this phone call. Hello?
You tell your punk boyfriend to pay me what he owes. He ain't gonna like what happens if I got to come over there and collect it myself.
Who is this? Hello? Hello?
And she's obviously very scared and concerned. Is her life in danger? Are they really going to come over here?
Sheila, don't worry about it. It's nothing.
DJ, this guy sounded serious. I don't think he's messing around.
It's nothing. Trust me.
I just don't want anything to happen to you.
I know, but it's fine. Promise. No, don't wait for me, all right? We'll be back later.
Okay. I believed him. But later that night, I heard this shouting downstairs. DJ?
Look, man, I don't have it just yet, but I will soon.
No, man, we done waiting.
She says she sees a black male and a Hispanic male circling DJ, yelling about the money he owes them.
DJ?
Baby, go back to bed.
You better make yourself disappear.
What if she calls the cops?
We ain't calling no cops. If we do, we'll come back here and kill you too. I ain't playing.
So I went back to my room, and I heard all these loud noises.
Like a fight?
Yeah. I could hear DJ begging them to stop. And then all of a sudden, the front door slammed.
She comes out of her bedroom, goes downstairs, DJ is gone, and there is blood everywhere.
Well, why didn't you call the police?
Because I was afraid. They said they were gonna kill me. I didn't know what to do.
Investigators are a bit skeptical of Sheila's story, but she's coming off as somewhat genuine. So they can't ignore the mention of these two new potential suspects.
Sheila, do you think that you can describe the men that you saw?
I can try.
She's asked to get with one of our lab techs to try to recreate a mugshot of these two people.
Like this? No, the eyebrows were definitely thicker than that.
Years earlier, they would use an artist to do this, but now there are a number of programs, and you literally assemble it on a computer screen.
Yeah, those lips look great.
You have hundreds and hundreds of possibilities, and you just keep trying until you get closer and closer and closer.
So you're positive this is what the guys who killed DJ look like?
I think so.
They have to pursue what she says because she said it. Once the cat's out of the bag, you have an obligation to pursue it.
As the legitimacy of Sheila's lead is tested, the investigation continues to gain traction from an unexpected source.
Miss Kenda.
Lieutenant, there's a woman on the phone here. Sounds like she might have some info on that murder the sheriff's office is working.
Really? Okay, put her through.
Hello?
This is Lieutenant Kenda. Who am I speaking with?
I don't want to tell you my name.
So she gets on the phone. She's very frightened and her voice is shaky.
But I think my neighbor might be involved in that murder up on Rampart Range.
And why is that?
Well, he was packing up his stuff this morning, and he said he needed to leave town because he did something bad.
And what's your neighbor's name?
Brandon Barnhart.
Brandon Barnhart.
And that name hit me right between the eyes.
You know if he's related to Sheila Barnhart?
Yeah. Sheila's his sister.
So Brandon says he's done something bad. Oh, it was more than bad, Brandon. It was brutal. And you made the mistake of doing it in your sister's apartment. The caller provides the address where she last saw him packing his things. We go to that address to pick him up on behalf of the sheriff's department.
Sheriff's Officer of the War, come to the door. Hands. Show us your hands when you step out. Slowly open the door. Step out slowly. Hands. Keep coming. Keep coming. Step all the way to my partner.
You looking for Brandon?
Yeah, is he here?
No, you just missed him.
And you are?
His mother?
Is there somewhere we can talk?
She says, I've been expecting the police to come by. The family is the people who are in possession of intimate knowledge of the missing person.
What?
Friends don't know what people do. Families know. I have gone to mothers of murder suspects on a number of occasions. There's no stronger bond than motherhood.
Thanks, John.
Mothers love their children no matter what they've done. They want to protect them as best they can. And if you present the facts to them in a reasonable way and explain to them that you have no intention of bringing harm to their child, they respond to that. They don't want their child to be hurt.
I don't know what's going on, but Brandon was acting real strange this morning. He seemed like he'd gotten himself into some trouble.
She said that Brandon shows up and he's all upset and being pretty evasive and keeps telling her he's sorry, and she's wondering, what are you sorry for?
Said he needed to leave town for a while. Didn't say why. Just packed his bag and up and left.
Do you know where he was headed?
If I had to guess, I'd say Reno. We've got family out there.
So she says he probably went to Reno, Nevada, and not to California, because we have family in Reno, Nevada. People, when they run, are filled with fear, they're filled with angst. They really don't know what to do, but they can't go to strangers. So he's got to go to family, somebody who might protect him, give him a place to hide, provide him with money, provide him with clothing, provide him with what he needs to survive long enough to stay out of custody.
What is it you think my son did?
Ma'am, were you aware that your daughter's boyfriend, DJ, was murdered?
And you think Brandon did it?
There's a strong possibility.
God, no. No, that can't be possible. Not my boy.
As a parent, right away you'd be thinking, this is a big mistake. You have the wrong person. My son would never be involved in something like that.
Well, if he calls or tries to contact you at all, can you let me know?
Okay. I'm gonna try to get him on the phone, too.
Okay. Thank you.
Now the sheriff's department is convinced that Sheila lied. Her brother is in flight, and he's not Hispanic, and he's not black. So whatever she said is a lie to prevent the discovery of the truth.
Sheila, we know your brother is somehow involved in this. Now, you need to tell us the truth, because if you don't, there's a very good chance that you will go down for whatever he did.
Okay. Okay, you're right. I didn't tell you the whole story. The truth is, DJ is just like every other boyfriend I've ever had.
She goes on to say she has been a victim of abuse by boyfriends. She thought that DJ would be different.
First, he was good to me. But I became suspicious that he was seeing other girls. And when I confronted him about it the other night, he just lost it.
She said he got upset with her and backhanded her, slapped her across the face. And then he commenced to assault her.
I told myself I was never gonna let any man mistreat me ever again. And I sure as hell wasn't gonna let DJ.
So you called your brother?
Yeah.
Hello? Hello?
Brandon, I need your help.
Why? What's wrong?
She called her brother and told him what had occurred, and he got really upset.
What? Wait, are you serious?
I have an idea of how to get him back.
So the next day, she tells her brother that she's going to poison him by baking poison muffins. Well, you look in a recipe book, Betty Crocker doesn't have anything about poison muffins, but Sheila has an idea.
I had some sleeping pills and prescription lithium. I crushed up and put into the muffin mix.
Lithium is a very powerful drug used to treat mental illness and is potentially fatal in a large amount.
Hey, babe. It smells amazing in here. Oh, you made muffins, huh?
I wanted to apologize for earlier.
Baby, you don't need to apologize. It's my fault, too.
She fed him the muffins, and sure enough, he laid down on the couch and went to sleep.
Brandon showed up with his friend Eric.
Eric who?
English. They told me to go upstairs and shut the door.
She could hear a terrible beating going on, and even heard Derek say stop.
She said when all the noise stopped, she came down the stairs and saw blood everywhere.
I didn't know DJ was dead or what. I thought Brandon was just going to beat him up. I swear.
Go ahead and stand on up.
Sheila is a typical criminal trying to distance herself from the event. She apparently, in a few minutes it took to tell the story, forgot that she tried to poison him to death. Now she wants to say she didn't participate in his murder. Excuse me?
Sheila is charged with first-degree murder, and the sheriff's department sets their sights on a newly named co-conspirator.
It's not just her and her brother anymore. It's her brother, and Eric English, whoever the hell he is.
Well, a background check's done on Eric, and it discloses that he has several warrants out for his arrest. So they find out where he's living and go to his residence.
Any eyes on the suspect? Negative. Okay, hold your positions till he comes out. Copy that.
Wait a minute.
Is that him?
They see a guy matching Eric English's description pull up.
We have a suspect confirmation. All right, all units prepare to move in. Use extreme caution. Go, 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 go.
You give him no opportunity to draw a weapon, no opportunity to run. You set the tone for the impending conversation.
Eric English! Eric English! Get out of the car!
So the choice is Eric English on how difficult he wants to make this arrest.
Hands up! Out of the car!
If he wants to cooperate and surrender, that's one thing.
Out of the car!
If he wants to resist, that's going to be the last thing he ever did. The Sheriff's Department is investigating the brutal murder of Derek James, and with our assistance have determined that Sheila Barnhart, Brandon Barnhart, and Eric English are the three people involved in this crime. And Eric English has just been spotted by police in his parking lot.
Out of the car!
Eric English is at a point of making a choice. Do you want to risk your life, or do you want to just get arrested?
Get out of the car! Hands up!
As I've often said to people, can you run 1,200 feet per second? Because this bullet can.
Out of the car! Get out of the car! Don't shoot! Put your hands up! Turn around.
What's going on?
Eric English, you're under arrest for the murder of Derek James.
What the hell are you talking about, man?
He's taken to the El Paso County Sheriff's Department for interrogation.
Any of these look familiar?
Yo, I don't want to see that. Damn.
Why not?
I didn't know we was gonna go that far.
That is an incriminating statement.
Who's we?
Me and Brandon.
Well, how'd you get roped into this in the first place?
That night, Brandon called me asking for a ride to his sister's place.
Eric picked him up, and when Brandon got in the car, he said, I want you to help me deal with a guy who hurt my sister.
I said, sure.
What happened when you got out to the house?
The guy was sleeping on the couch, and I thought we were gonna wake him up. All of a sudden, Brandon pulled out a pipe and started knocking the hell out of him.
Eric says Brandon just went off on him and started beating him absolutely out of control. And Eric was shocked. He didn't expect it.
I swear, I didn't even touch the guy.
Well, how'd you get DJ's body out to Rampart Range Road?
I don't know. Brandon figured all that out.
Oh, well, then I guess you won't mind if we take a look in your trunk?
Yeah, I want a lawyer.
Well, you're kind of too late for that, Eric. You've already buried yourself in the middle of a murder.
Well, all right then. Good luck, Eric. You're gonna need it.
Eric is now in custody, so is Sheila, but we are still missing Brandon Barnhart. We need to find him.
Luckily for the investigation, they don't need to look too far.
All right, I'll let him know. Can I help you?
Yeah, I'm Brandon Barnhart. I'm here to turn myself in.
Really? Well, fine, we'll do that. We accept all business 24 hours a day. Now we have all the players in the hands of the Sheriff's Department.
Mr. Barnhart, I'm Detective Hatch. I understand you're ready to tell us what happened to Derek James.
I didn't mean to kill him, man.
All right. Relax, Brandon.
Brandon is emotionally distraught. He's a perfect candidate for an interrogation.
Relax for a moment. Just tell us what happened with DJ.
Knew right from the beginning that it wasn't gonna work between him and Sheila.
What do you mean?
I've known that dude a long time.
Brandon explains that he, too, was in foster care at points in his life, just like DJ. They both wound up in group homes together, and they became friends.
And through the years, we kind of just drifted off. Stopped talking to each other as much. Kept getting in trouble, going to prison. And one day I find out he's dating my sister.
How'd you feel about that?
How do you think I felt?
He wasn't very happy about that, because he knew who DJ was. Brandon even had a conversation with DJ.
I know we go way back, you know, man, but I don't know about you dating my sister.
You tripping, Brand?
No, I'm not. Now promise me you're gonna treat her right.
All right, man. I promise.
So when his sister called him crying, saying that DJ beat her up, Brandon flipped a switch. He went into a blind rage.
Eric, get your ass over here now!
And all he wanted to do was get even.
So we made a plan, and I had Eric come pick me up.
Did you have some sort of weapon with you?
Yeah.
Let's go.
Rebar is solid steel used in the construction of concrete, so it is, without question, a deadly weapon.
When we got there, I knew that Sheila had slipped DJ some pills. Where's he at?
He's on the couch in the living room.
Yo, DJ.
He hit him as hard and as often as he could. Eric is also participating in the attack.
I think he wants more, Brandon. Kick his ass.
Come on.
And it sounds like Sheila was there, egging him on.
Sheila, get the rope.
Brandon said that Sheila got kind of a black web belt and tied it around his legs to keep him from squirming around. They then taped his hands together.
At some point, Brandon admits to putting the rebar under his chin and he heard something snap.
They then wrapped him in a blue blanket, drug him out to Eric's car, and then they drove him up Rampart Range Road.
Get it off the hook.
They then drug him from the trunk of Eric's car over to the side of the overlook. What a brutal way to end somebody's life.
It's a savage killing by people who are unconcerned about what they're doing because they're angry. And in their mind, that makes it okay. DJ has transgressed, and they're going to punish him.
Brandon Barnhart's disturbing confession implicates not only himself, but also his sister Sheila and his friend, Eric English. All three are charged with first-degree murder for their roles in the crime.
Eric, Brandon, and Sheila all pled guilty to a reduced charge of second-degree murder, and they were sentenced to 48 years. Stephanie received 4 years probation.
I've never been surprised by what people will do, but I've often been disappointed. Here you have a situation where nobody's smart enough to consider protection orders or going over and removing his sister from the presence of this individual. Nobody thinks about that. They think about rage. You hurt my sister, I'm gonna hurt you. Derek James didn't understand who he was dealing with, and he found that out at the end of a 20-inch piece of rebar.
Snow grinding across the lake like teeth. Sirens pushing through the hard wind. A city holding its breath at 2:13 a.m. A payphone clicks, a voice stutters, a line goes dead. That's the first sound anyone remembers. Not the scream, not the crash of a garbage can in the alley, not the bark of a dog on 23rd. The payphone. A quarter jammed in the slot, the metal still warm when the first cruiser arrives, steam lifting from the steel mouth like a whisper. She is not there. She is already an outline in the dark. Her name leaves a trail in the snow even though no footprints do. Elena, 23, nursing student, night shift at St. Jude's. Last seen with a red scarf and a canvas backpack patched at the corners with tiny hand-stitched stars. She walked out of the clinic past the vending machine that always eats nickels. She turned left, not right. She cut through the lot beside the shuttered laundromat because she always says, "Time is a thread, don't waste it. The clock is a predator. Keep moving, keep moving." A man closing the bar across the street holds the door with his hip and watches her pass, light pooling on ice, the street lamp flickering like a bad heartbeat. He feels something wrong and cannot name it. He listens to the snow. He thinks of his daughter asleep with a fever. He almost calls out, almost says, "Miss, hey, wait." Instead, he lets the door fall and the music cut off and the lock turn. He counts the till. He wipes the counter in circles. He will never stop seeing that red thread of scarf draw a line into the alley. He will never stop thinking of the word almost. It will wake him for years like a knock. Detectives step around tire tracks that begin and end as if a car rose like a ghost. The alley is a corridor of brick and breath. A cat hides beneath a rusted stair. A window on the second floor peels back a slit of yellow, and the silhouette of a hand creams a curtain. No one wants to be the first to say the words missing, abduction, cold. A boot scuffs to a stop over something dark that isn't snow. They kneel, a thin smear. Then another on the edge of a dented dumpster. The red scarf. No, a red thread snagged on a jag of metal, trembling in the wind like a tiny flag. A badge number is called. A camera whines. Flash. Flash. The alley blinks like a terrified eye. A reporter in a wool coat scribbles in a notebook, pen freezing, breath visible, questions hardening as they come out. Who is she? Where was she going? Was she alone? Did she have enemies? What was she wearing? Was she in a fight? The officer lifts his palm like a slow door. No comment. The reporter writes anyway. She always writes anyway. In the morning, an editor will carve the headline until it bleeds. Cold case begins in the snow. The city will sip its coffee and nod grimly. It knows how these stories go. It's seen the river carry secrets and the L melt them into smoke. It's trained for tragedy, like a boxer for 12 rounds. But something in this one bites too deep. Maybe it's the scarf, maybe it's the payphone quarter jammed and shining, maybe it's how quickly the dark swallowed the street after she turned left. Her mother will keep the porch light on. She will do it for years, long after the bulb blackens and the sockets wobble and the switch crackles. She will do it because that is the ritual in these neighborhoods. The light says we haven't given up. The father will not sit. He will pace a slow rectangle into the linoleum floor, a map of an escape route that never existed. The younger brother will ride his bike up and down the block until the chain snaps and the pedal spins empty and he falls in the snow and pounds it with his fists, a small boy carving a hole in a white field to bury his roar. The parish priest will ring the bell twice, a hollow sound that feels like a summons. People will gather. They will bring soup. They will bring names. They will bring a rumor about a van with a dented side panel seen on canal. They will bring a story about a man with mismatched boots at the bus stop by Halstead. They will bring their fear and pass it around like a bowl. Inside the district, a detective flips a file open and the case oxygenates with the smell of toner. He is tired of the taste of unsolved. It coats the tongue like soot. On his wall is a calendar with a boxing legend staring down from January. On his desk, a chipped mug, a metal ruler, a photo of Lake Michigan in summer. He tries to imagine the same water under ice, and it angers him. He glances at the evidence bag with the red thread sealed like a vein. He puts it in the folder as if that makes it safer. He reads Elena's file like a prayer. Grade solid, co-workers like her, no boyfriend, no debt, no drama, an immigrant daughter whose parents measure progress in inches. The detective writes the word clean and then scratches it out. There is no clean in this city. Only better and worse, only sharp and dull, only how loud the noise is when it breaks. They knock on doors until knuckles bruise. They ask the bar owner what he saw. He says a silhouette. He says a hush in the wind. He says, I felt something wrong. The detective says, what did you do? The man says nothing. The detective says, it doesn't mean you're guilty. The man says, I know. It just means I have to live with a small coward living in my mouth. He trembles. He looks at his hands. He asks if there is anything else he can do. The detective says, remember, remember hard. He thinks about how memory is a drunk witness. It slurs. It adds color that wasn't there. It forgets the knife but remembers the song on the radio. He presses anyway. The man says there was a smell. Rubber. Hot rubber, like someone rode the brakes and then let go. The detective writes, tires heated, possible fast stop. The man says, and a bell. A bell from a bike or a toy. One clean ding, then gone. The detective pauses, pen in air, then writes it down because sometimes the smallest sound is the truest arrow. At the hospital break room, a co-worker cries into coffee. Elena was quick, precise, kind. She tied IV lines like ribbon. She hummed without realizing, the same 2 bars over and over. She collected lost buttons in a glass jar on her locker shelf. She wore the red scarf because her mother said red wards off the evil eye. She always turned left because it shaved 3 minutes off, and she hated being late, even by a breath. The detective examines the locker, finds the jar of buttons, finds a folded parking ticket, finds a note that says, stop walking alone, M. Who is M? No one knows. One nurse says maybe Miguel, the supply tech. He stammers around Elena like a kid around ice cream. Another says maybe Mary. The night supervisor, stern eyes, soft heart. The detective asks both. The supply tech blushes and shakes his head. The supervisor looks through him and says, everyone in this wing is a letter in someone's note. It doesn't mean anything. He writes their names in the file anyway. You never know which detail will be a lit fuse. Street cameras in 1991 are lazy witnesses, grainy, slower than truth. They catch a smear of red, a darker shape, something that could be a hand or just wind. A shape like a van drifts at the lip of the frame, stops, then slides away into static. The plate is a soup of pixels. The detective curses at the screen until it empties. He sends the tape to a lab that promises to coax out ghosts. The lab sends back a letter saying the ghosts refuse to cooperate. The detective throws the letter into a drawer where other letters sleep like dead birds. Days stretch. The city chews through January. Tips rise, pop, vanish. A psychic calls the station and speaks in riddles about a bridge, about water refusing a name, about a woman standing on a ladder that isn't there. A man in a tan coat shows up saying he saw Elena on a train the next morning. The detective asks what line. The man says blue. The detective says there is no blue line where you claim to have been. The man insists. The detective watches the man's mouth twist around the word blue, like it's the only color he trusts. The detective lets him go with a tired nod. The city is full of people trying to splice themselves into headlines. He has a cold case forming in front of him like frost. In the alley, a maintenance worker finds a coin wedged in the seam of the payphone's base. Not a quarter. A token, punched with a hole, smooth from years in someone's pocket. On one side, a bell. On the other, a number etched by hand, 41. He bags it, brings it inside, sets it on the detective's desk like a relic. The detective turns it in his palm and feels a hum. A bell. One clean ding. The bar owner's memory yawns open like a door. The detective tastes adrenaline and copper. He calls the lab. He calls a friend who collects transit tokens and speaks about them as if they're saints. The friend says the bell token is rare, used by a defunct ferry line that ran before you or I learned to lie. He laughs, then stops when the detective doesn't. He says, okay, there's a speakeasy off Cermak that uses copies of old tokens as drinks currency in a backroom game. You don't go there unless you want to leave behind a name. You go there if you want to be a number. The detective goes. The door is unmarked, the hallway smells like bleach and gin, the back room is a low light where cards slap and faces don't. He lays the token on the felt and the room tilts toward it like plants toward a window. A man with a scar like a comma above his lip says that token is a marker, pay your debt, or pay later. 41 means the 41st favor, or the 41st drink, or the 41st night you promised the house you were done. Numbers change, meaning here like shadows. The detective asks who in the city still carries one like a charm. The man says someone who wants to be seen as a ghost, someone who needs to be remembered by a code, not a face. The detective asks if they've seen a red scarf come through this door. The man says the house sees everything, but only remembers what it can sell. The detective lays down a photograph. The man studies the eyes for too long. He shakes his head slow. He lies, maybe. He is a professional at it, but his thumb rubs the edge of the photo the way grief rubs a bruise. The detective pockets the token and leaves with the sense of having been measured and counted and filed. Community pressure spikes. Flyers bloom on lampposts like warnings. A vigil burns under the viaduct with candles that spit and gutter in the draft. The mayor's office issues a statement praising the tireless work of law enforcement. The detective crumples the statement and throws it toward the trash and misses. The mother goes on television with the porch light glow in her eyes. She says Elena is brave. She says Elena is stubborn. She says Elena will walk back into this house because we taught her how. She does not say the heavy thought she wears like wet wool. What if stubborn meant something harder? Weeks become months. The file gets a second rubber band, then a third. The detective won't admit this case is turning to ice. He won't say the words cold case out loud because he is superstitious, because he knows the minute you name the winter it moves in, coats every doorknob, every phone line, every heartbeat. But the city does it for him. Headlines now say cold case. Morning radio says unsolved. The corner store clerk says, did you hear? A kid on a BMX says, my cousin saw the van. The detective keeps moving. He tapes the red thread to his wall with a piece of clear film so thin it looks like it floats. He stacks buttons on his desk in the shape of a question mark. He flips the token when he needs to decide which lead to run first. Heads means the bar, bell means the payphone company. The coin lands on bell so often he starts to suspect it is loaded. Life is loaded. He runs the payphone anyway. The phone company sends a technician who has more grease on his hands than the cruiser has miles. He pulls the payphone apart like a magician unbuilding a trick. He finds gum hardened into the shape of a vow. He finds a folded scrap of a map torn from a tourist brochure showing the Riverwalk with a circle in blue pen around a spot by the old warehouse pier. He finds a receipt for tea in a language the detective can't read. He finds a hair, long, dark, caught in a screwhead, a single thread of a story that still wants to live. He bags it. He bags them all. The technician says the quarter jammed the line at 2:13 exactly. No outgoing calls registered, only a click. The detective closes his eyes and hears the click, the inhale, the silence that follows, the decision not to speak pressed into a mouth like a coin. He opens them and sees the river on the map. By the pier, the water is a black throat. The planks moan under boot. A gull screams like a siren and then forgets what it was saying. The detective kneels where the circle would be if maps lay themselves over the city like skin. He finds scuffs on the wood. He finds a half moon of rubber rubbed into a seam. He finds a tiny round indentation, like the base of a tripod. He stands, looks around, and understands an angle. A camera placed here would see the alley mouth 2 blocks away, through an alley mouth closer, a tunnel of tunnels, a corridor of sight. He feels watched, and not by the gull. He steps back. He imagines someone run a lens over the night like a tongue. The detective does not like ghosts that can film. He canvasses the warehouse, empty, but emptiness is a costume. Inside, lacquered on a beam, he finds 4 faint numbers written in pencil. 041. He photographs them, he rubs them with his thumb. Graphite dust darkens his skin. The bell token warms in his pocket like a coal. He calls the lab again, the one that makes promises. He says, try again with the tape. He says, build me a plate that makes sense. He says, there is a camera in the world that knows what it saw. He says, I will not let this go to sleep. He hangs up and stares at the river until the city's breath fogs it and reveals nothing and reveals everything, which is to say a sense that something important stood here and left a shadow that stretched all the way to the alley and beyond. He drives to Elena's street. He sits across from the house with the porch light and he watches the windows. The mother moves through rooms like a slow clock. The father pauses at the door and opens it and closes it and opens it, as if the night air carries messages he can almost hear. The younger brother has learned to ride again, and this time his chain is oiled and the wheel whispers instead of screams. The detective writes in his notebook words that are not evidence: stubborn, brave, thread, bell, river. He underlines bell twice. He turns the token in his pocket with his thumb and counts to 41 without knowing why. He looks at the red scarf thread under the clear tape and thinks, anchors. The smallest things hold ships. And then the city exhales. Snow turns to rain. The alley remembers how to smell like trash and laundry and cats scanning the dark for mice. The payphone is replaced with a newer model that makes a softer click. The bar changes hands. The backroom game moves 2 blocks south, deeper into shadow. Time grows a Rhine. People stop mentioning Elena unless someone brings it up. The detective keeps bringing it up. The file grows. The label on its spine bleaches from red to pink to a near white that makes you think of ghosts. The clock on the wall loses a minute and no one corrects it, as if the room conspired to give itself extra time. He keeps moving. He keeps the porch light of his work on. He keeps the thread on the wall bright as a warning. He keeps the token near his keys, a bell in his pocket, a single ding ready to slice the air and say, wake up. Snow melts into a gray film that slicks the curb and makes the city smell like pennies and old paper. The detective's shoes squeak in the hallway as he drags the file back to his desk and lays it down like a body that needs its pulse checked. The squad room hums, copy machine coughing, frisk of jackets, coffee gurgling, radios muttering call signs like half-remembered prayers. He looks at the red thread taped to the wall, and then at the bell token, thumbs spinning it in a slow orbit he can't quit. 41. A number is a door when the city wants it to be. He tells himself to push. He begins where the city ends, down by the rail yards that braid themselves into iron snarls, and asks about vans that come and go without plates, without questions, without anyone willing to write down who paid cash. No one knows anything until someone knows too much. A yard man with diesel nails and a voice like sand says there's a white van with a left rear panel that wrinkles when the light hits it, like skin puckered by an old burn. He says it belongs to a man people call Pastor, who wears a tie too tight, sells cleaning supplies that burn your throat, prays before he lifts anything heavy. The detective writes Pastor and underlines it. He knows the type: counterfeit saint, licensed by fear, vending redemption by the gallon. He finds the house where the van sleeps. Cinderblock garage, padlock like a fist, a chain-link fence decorated with grocery bags that flutter like ghosts attempting a semaphore. He waits, watches. The van returns late, engine ticking, the man climbing out with the slow care of someone counting steps, a suit that tries to be Sunday trapped in a Tuesday. The detective doesn't announce himself. He lets the image burn on his inner film. The dent does pucker, the plate is dirty, the bumper sticker reads, "Comb your hair and your life will follow." He smiles despite himself. He will knock another day. For now, he needs a map wider than a single man's necktie. At records, he digs for 41s. Building permits stamped with 41, parcel numbers flaring with the digits. Streetlight maintenance tickets, bus routes, precinct wards. The city loves to index itself, to split the world into boxes with labels. And if you listen, labels are a code. He finds a run of incidents along old industrial corridors, each one a small bruise that didn't make the front page. A purse snatched by a driver who never fully stopped. A woman grabbed, fought free, left with a sprained wrist, and a memory of a clean ding in the air. A witness who said a camera stared at her like an eye and then wasn't there when she turned to point. He circles each in red ink until the map looks like measles. The detective hates the sensation he gets then, the one like something is looking back from the paper, amused. He returns to the hospital at shift change. The air smells like antiseptic and exhaustion. He watches nurses in winter coats march into neon and out of it. He stops Mary, the supervisor with the stern eyes and the soft heart. "We're past the part where you say no one knows anything," he says, voice gentle, because he's learned that force stiffens truth. We're at the part where you tell me what you kept back because you thought it was nothing and you didn't want to be nothing on record. Mary tucks a stray hair back the way you might tuck a child in. A delivery man, she says. Not ours. Boxes of gloves and cups, late night, 2 weeks before Elena disappeared. He asked for her by name, said he was a cousin. Heavy coat, no cousin ever visits with a dolly. She laughed it off. I told her to call security next time. She rolled her eyes. She was 23. At that age, danger is a rumor your mother uses to make curfew make sense. The detective writes delivery man, cousin. He asked for details. Mary closes her eyes and builds a face from stitch and shadow. A nose that looked broken when he was young and set by a mirror. A scar at the jawline like someone started to erase him. A mouth that didn't quite know how to smile. He whistled when he turned down the hall, she adds. One note, like a bell trying to learn a tune. The detective thinks, the city is a choir of one notes that don't get along. Back at the desk, he feeds the description into the shape he's making without admitting he's making one. He runs the names of delivery services, the licenses, the permits, the fines. A list unspools. Men who push dollies at ungodly hours for ungodly pay. Jobs stacked like teetering boxes. He pulls 3 with old assault charges and 1 with a false name that keeps changing its haircut. He visits them one by one in lunchrooms and hallways and on stoops that smell like rain and cigarettes. 2 deny and look bored while doing it. 1 looks too interested in the photograph of Elena, eyes dragging across the image like a smudge. The last is the false name with the broken nose and the not smile. He's sweeping a warehouse floor when the detective introduces himself. He sweeps through the introduction like the broom is a rule, and he is dutiful. You ask about the girl already, the man says, accent braided from places he won't name. Cops asked last year. Cop before that asked 3 years back. A circle. You like walking circles. I like straight lines, the detective says, when the city lets me. The man looks toward the river quick as if it just spoke. Straight lines are lies by another name, he says, then shrugs. I don't know her. You asked for her by name, the detective says, letting the sentence sit like a fish on a dock, gasping, waiting to become something else. The broom stops. The man blinks. His not smile fails outright. He resumes sweeping, which is to say, he refuses. Lots of people know names, he says. Sometimes they read the label on a locker. Sometimes they pretend to be family because family gets you past doors, but I don't know her. Where'd you get that scar? The detective asks, pointing to the jawline. Childhood, the man says. What childhood? The detective asks. The kind that leaves scars, the man says, and the broom begins again. The detective takes down the plates on the car out front. One plate is a real plate. The other is the memory of a different plate painted to look real, and it is the kind of thing you only see if you've stared at plates long enough to hate them. He writes that too. Night sags into the squad room. He makes a call to a friend in Vice who owes him a favor from a fiasco with a counterfeit perfume ring that ended with 3 men smelling like lilacs for a month. The favor is this. The backroom game, the place where the bell token is currency, keeps a ledger not because it's honest, but because greed loves to admire itself in mirrors. You'll never get it, his friend says, but you might get a rumor of it. Rumor arrives in a diner at 1:20 a.m., a waitress doling out pie like medicine, a runner from the back room resting his elbows on Formica. 41, the runner says, eyebrows climbing, like the number itself is a celebrity. 41 is a table, not a person. Table by the door, easy out if things get loud. Guys who sit at 41 don't plan to stay long. They tip in tokens because the house pretends those mean something. They make calls from the payphone down the block because the house pretends it doesn't hear. They like the river. They like having their back to it like it's an extra wall. Names, the detective says. Numbers, the runner says, but then he says a name anyway because people can't help themselves. Whit Carlo, a clown, a crack, a guy who films everything, not professionally, compulsively. The city is his animal. He wants to capture it and teach it tricks. He's got a tripod he treats like a dog. You whistle, he comes. The detective hears the word films and thinks of the pier, the small round indentation, the corridor of sight lined up across mouths of alleys like a rifle scope built of architecture. He says, "Where do I whistle?" The runner scribbles an address on a napkin, then scratches it out, then writes another. He moves. He's allergic to roots, he says. But he always comes back to this one, for reasons only he and the river understand. He finds Whit in a loft with too many windows and too little truth. The man is thin in the way of people who forget meals while they try to eat time instead. Cameras everywhere, lenses asleep like closed eyes, the kind of chaos that only makes sense to the one who made it. Whit smiles with all the wrong parts of his mouth. Officer, detective, Brother, priest. Which version are you? He asks, his accent borrowed from television. The one with questions, the detective says. You set up a camera by a pier that lines with an alley that swallowed a girl. You make films like traps. Show me what you caught. Whit laughs and claps once, the sound too loud for the room. Caught, he says, and the word slithers. I don't catch, I witness. The city is the animal, I let it show itself to itself. He flits between shelves, plucking tapes, a taxonomy of nights. He feeds one to a machine older than some crimes. Screen hums, dust motes spin in the projector beam like lazy insects. The alley appears, a throat of brick. A smear of red becomes a stitch of red, becomes the suggestion of a scarf. A van is a block of snow with wheels. A figure is a shadow that learned how to walk. 15 seconds that feel like a minute. Down at the corner of the frame, a hand enters, gloved, steady, then withdraws. A bell rings once, off camera, clean as a dropped pearl. Don't touch that, Whit says when the detective leans in. Where'd you put this camera? The detective asks, and Whit tells him what the detective already knows. The pier, the alignment, the corridor. Why? Because geometry is honest even when people aren't, Whit says. Lines meet where lines want to meet. It's a city of crossroads. I like crossroads. You put a lens there and you learn which way the wind is blowing and which way the wolf is prowling. Did you see her face? The detective asks, and Whit's smile drops like a coin. No, Whit says. Faces are jealous. They hide when you ask too hard. Make me a copy, the detective says. Whit shrugs, brags, bargains, bows. I film for myself, he says, but he makes the copy anyway, sliding it across the table with a flourish. Bring it back, he says. Or don't. The river always makes more film. Back at the lab, the technician noses the tape for a new angle. He coaxes pixels like a horse trainer coaxes a skittish mare. The plate on the van refuses to become a plate. The glove refuses to confess which brand it is, but a reflection in a window halfway up the alley, missed before, blink and you lose it, shows a sliver of something at shoulder height, strapped. The technician circles it on the printout. Could be a camera harness, he says, not the tripod, a chest mount, someone making their own view. Who wears the city on their chest and rings a bell? The detective asks the room. The room doesn't answer. He flips the token. Bell. He thinks of the false name with the broom and the scar and the plate that wanted to be two things at once. He pulls that thin thread. He runs the car. It comes back to a shell company that rents to a church that doesn't host services but sells inspirational tapes in a strip mall where sunlight goes to nap. Pastor. The van. The pucker dent. Circles tighten like hands around a throat. He knocks on the cinder block garage at noon when the street is loud enough to hide a shout. Pastor opens with a smile he puts on like a jacket. Detective, he says, have you come to be saved or to save me the indignity of asking what this is about? Both, the detective says. He looks past the man to the van. He asks to see inside. Consent is a dance. Pastor steps aside and the detective waltzes in with a warrant folded like a pocket square. The van smells like bleach fighting vanilla and losing. There are straps along the walls, honest enough if you transport drums. A harness hangs from a hook, the kind skydiving instructors trust and voyeurs worship. A small brass bell dangles from a string on the rear view like a prayer. Nice bell, the detective says. Found it at a flea market, Pastor says. It sings when the road melts. You know how salt and tires make music. The detective glances at the dent. He crouches. He measures it with his hand, and it is exactly not an accident, the curve too round, the edge too clean. A catch point, a point that could catch a scarf if the city was in a cruel mood. He stands, finds a smear on a strap. The lab will call it nothing for now. But later has a way of changing its mind. Where were you January 2nd, 2 years ago? He asks, and Pastor's eyes don't blink in the right rhythm. At God's work, Pastor says, which is? Delivering cleaner to the unclean, Pastor says, and smiles at his own joke like God is standing behind the detective, ready to applaud. Who's Whit Carlo? The detective asks, and Pastor's jaw clenches an eighth of an inch, enough to tick a box in the detective's head. A sinner with a camera, Pastor says. A man who films our failings and calls it art. He used to ride with me, said the van gave him moving angles, like he was inside the city's bloodstream. Does he still? No, Pastor says. He stopped paying for gas. God does not float freeloaders. The detective leaves with a copy of the delivery logs, fabrications that at least know how to spell, and a permission he didn't ask for, which is to say an invitation to come back with more paper and less politeness. He returns to Whit and finds the loft empty, one window breathing in, one window out. A tape on the table that wasn't there before, labeled in a hand that loves itself, 041. He plays it. Not the alley, not the pier. A room. 41 painted small on the wall beside a door that opens and closes like a trick. People enter, money leaves, a bell ting. He watches Pastor glide through once, twice, 3 times. He watches the false name with the broom past the door without entering, but he pauses, touches the bell with one finger, like a man testing if metal remembers his skin. He sleeps 3 hours and dreams of lines connecting points on a map until the lines become strings and the city becomes a harp someone violent and patient is plucking. He wakes with the word ledger in his mouth. He calls Vice again. He says, "I don't need the book. I need who keeps it." The answer is a woman known as the secretary, who can memorize a week of tables and debts and lies and not break a sweat, whose office is wherever her shoes are parked. He finds her in a laundromat where half the machines are dead, but the hum is still holy. She's folding shirts that don't belong to her. She looks up and sees a detective trying to look like a man doing laundry. She smiles. "You don't fold," she says. "You stack. That's how I know what you are." "I want to know what table 41 is when it's not a table," he says. "A doorway," she says. "A promise. A threat." She shakes out a shirt, snaps it flat. "Sometimes it's a girl," she adds casually, and the detective's blood goes cold in a way weather can't explain. Girls are numbers to men with ledgers. 41 is a missing debt, someone paid with someone else's time. "Who?" the detective says. She laughs without humor. "You know who. The man who pretends to pray, the man who straps a camera to his chest so he can rehearse his defense, the man whose van smells like he's trying to scrub God into the fabric." "Pastor," the detective says. "And his shadow," she says. "Every saint hires a sinner to carry the knife. Yours has a jaw that doesn't heal right." False name, broom, jaw scar, the bell in Pastor's van, the bell in Witt's films, the number on the wall at the warehouse, the token with the hand-etched 41, the quarter jammed at 2:13, the red thread snagged on a clean curve. The detective feels the city turning its head as if listening to its own bones creak. He moves before the city can change the subject. Warrants, a team, doors kicked when knocking won't suffice. The warehouse off Kermack yields boxes with cleaning supplies and cameras and gloves and a folder of photographs of alleys that repeat like a haunting, each one labeled with coordinates, the handwriting neat, those neatnesses that make your stomach drop. Pastor's cinderblock garage yields receipts from the strip mall church, a ledger and a Bible that's been hollowed with a carpenter's devotion, a page with the word debt written 41 times and crossed out 40. The broom man's room yields a locker with a red fiber stuck in the hinge. Not proof, not yet, but the lab will tell stories when you coax it. He sits in the interview room with the false name under the light and lets silence fill the gaps until the man shifts in his chair like someone remembers their skin. "I swept floors," the man says. "I carried boxes. I didn't carry girls." "Which is it?" the detective asks. "You didn't carry girls, or you carried this girl." "I don't know her," the man says, and then, because the city is merciless to liars with bad timing, he adds, "She wore a scarf." The detective doesn't smile. He doesn't need to. The room tightens a notch. "Tell me about the bell," he says. "It's for the door," the man says, and looks at the ceiling, as if the ceiling will help him decide which door he means. "Which door?" the detective repeats, and now the man's pulse shows itself in his neck like a rabbit in high grass. "Table 41, the man says, mouth tripping over fear. "Bell for the door. Ding means run, or ding means stay, depending who you are." The detective stands, walks to the door, opens it, closes it, lets the hinge creak like a hinge that wants to be a confession. He speaks to the glass like it's a parish. "Get me the lab. Get me Witt. Get me the ledger that thinks it's holy. Get me Pastor in a chair with the bell in a plastic bag in front of him. Get me the van measured, the strap swabbed, the dent weighed." He sits back down. He looks at the man whose childhood left scars that made him like this, which is to say, not innocent, not monstrous, but a bridge for monsters to cross. He thinks of Elena's porch light thriving against 1,000 nights. He thinks of the brother's bike chain slick with oil. He thinks of the mother's hands, which make soup, which hold photographs, which sleep on the table like birds too tired to fly. "Tell me where she is," he says, and it comes out softer than he planned. "Tell me where she stopped being a number." The man closes his eyes. When he opens them, the city in them is smaller. "Under the river," he says. "Where the pylons rot but hold on anyway. Where Pastor said the water baptizes what we don't want to name. Where Witt said the shot would be clean." The room tilts, rights itself. The detective stands. Boots, coats, radios chirp alive. Sirens are instructed not to flare. The river waits, black throat learning a new vowel. He has divers he trusts because they have learned how to say the water's name without choking on it. They go in, they find a length of chain caught in a beam, a loop of canvas that could once have been a strap for a backpack, a ring of metal that hates the cold. They find, no, not now, the water is slow and precise in what it gives on its own schedule. The detective stands with his hands on the railing and imagines the city as a mouth that has swallowed a story and is, for once, ready to spit it up. Whit appears on the pier like he was dropped by a crane. He holds his camera to his chest like it's a confession. Pastor arrives flanked by a lawyer whose tie is not too tight, whose smile is the kind that sells winter to Eskimos. The secretary watches from the viaduct, eyes the only part of her that moves. The bar owner comes out and smokes and doesn't look away and will never again say, almost because he is here now and that is his penance. Mary folds her arm against the wind and blesses this place without moving her lips. The mother stays at home with the porch light and stares at the door like it might learn a new trick. Open. The divers surface. One holds up a hand with a small motion. Wait. 1 minute is a year, another minute is a decade. Then a bag breaks the skin, plastic crackling like a secret, markings inside that rust remembers too clearly. Then a second bag, then a third, and then something else, something that turns the air around it solemn. Not a body, not yet. A chain of metal buttons, wire twisted together like a rosary, each button different, rescued once from coat and shirt, now rescued again from dark. The detective stares and sees the glass jar on a locker shelf, the habit of hope. He feels the air thicken. He hears a bell make no sound and make all the sound at once. He doesn't cheer. No one cheers when the city returns something it should never have taken. He looks at Pastor, at the jaw scar, at Whit's hungry lens. The story is not over. The line that says solved is a line people love to write because it satisfies the part of the brain that hates unfinished chords. But the city never resolves, not entirely. Even when you close a file, the tape keeps rolling somewhere, showing a pier, a corridor of sight, a hand that enters the frame and changes everything and then leaves like it was never there. He breathes. He gets ready to write the next page with a pen that shakes as if it knows what comes next will feel like a bell rung just once and forever. Rain needles the river until the surface turns to static, divers bobbing like punctuation marks in a sentence the city refuses to finish. The detective stands with the railing under his palms, splinters pressing small truths into skin. The chain of buttons lies on a towel, splayed like a rosary broken mid-prayer, metal discs dull with silt, each one stolen once from a coat, hoarded in a jar, threaded now by water and wire into a memorial the river tried to keep. A crime scene tech counts them softly, the sound a lullaby for something that will not sleep. 21, 22, 23. Each number lands like a shovel bite. Someone behind the detective swallows a sob and swallows it again until it becomes a cough. No one looks at Pastor, but everyone knows where he is by the way the air curves around his silence. Whit films without lifting the camera. He breathes through it, eye wide and wet, lens hungry enough to eat light. The lawyer murmurs, the kind of murmur that means invoice. The secretary watches as if she is counting exits, long coat barely moving, hair pinned with the exact number of pins it takes to keep a story in place. The detective gestures, slow, careful. The divers bring up a length of canvas strap, the buckle furred with rust, a zipper head shaped like a little star. The star is small, but it burns. It burns a memory open, hand-stitched stars at the corners of a backpack, Elena's habit of making the ordinary refuse anonymity. The detective doesn't speak. He points. The tech photographs. The river does the thing rivers do when they want to confess and keep a secret at the same time. It offers a piece, then retreats with the rest clutched in its fist. In the squad room, the air tastes like copper and old coffee and victory no one wants to call victory. Bags get logged. A conference room becomes a chapel where evidence is the only scripture allowed. The chain of buttons on a table under 2 lamps looks like a spine. The strap smells like wet dust and something sweeter beneath, a ghost of soap that tries too hard. The detective calls the lab and says, "Tell me which hands touched which piece and when, even if the answer is shadows." The lab says it prefers blood to shadows, but they'll try. The interview room eats time. Pastor sits with his wrists folded, the bell in a plastic bag 2 inches from his fingers, as if proximity will teach him humility. He regards it like a man who's forgotten what an object is for. The detective stays off camera for the first minute. He lets Pastor stare at his reflection in the one-way glass like it's the only God he trusts. Then the detective slides into the chair, opens the file, sets down the chain of buttons and the canvas strap, and the photograph of a red thread floating in an alley that still smells like January. "You ever baptize metal?" he asks, voice low. "I cleanse what can be cleansed," Pastor says, smile adjusting itself, a tie performing contrition by constriction. "I help the city slough its stains. I'm a janitor with better metaphors." You baptize this? The detective taps the strap. You rinse this until the smell of a girl's life turned into the smell of your van? My van smells like commerce, Pastor says. And vanilla. I prefer vanilla. Cleaner strong enough to etch your lungs, the detective says. A harness in the back, a dent where cloth could snag, a ledger in a hollowed Bible, 41 written 41 times. You like numbers, Pastor? Numbers like me, Pastor says, calm as a priest over bread. They obey, unlike people. Unlike Elena, the detective says. The name is a match. He strikes it between them and watches him not flinch. She didn't obey. She didn't go quiet. I don't know Elena, Pastor says, and the lie is professional grade, engineered to pass inspections. I deliver to hospitals and churches. I deliver to men who wipe other men's sins off warehouse floors. I don't deliver women to rivers. The detective says nothing for a long time. Silence is a solvent. It loosens the glue on masks. Pastor leans back. He looks at the bell again, then away, as if it's an inside joke he's tired of. The detective slides a folder forward. Photographs of corridors, the pier, the alley, Witt's frame grab of a gloved hand, the round indentation where a tripod foot bit wood. Your cameraman likes geometry, the detective says. He places eyes where lines agree. He puts the city on a rack and asks it to stretch. A cameraman is not a confessional, Pastor says. He sees but doesn't know. He guesses, like you. The detective leans in. He sat at table 41, which is a door, which is a threat, which is a promise that someone won't be missed by anyone who has power to complain. He filmed the door like it owed him rent. He filmed you moving in and out like a tide. He filmed your shadow. Your shadow has a jaw that never healed right. Pastor's eyes empty, then refill. He smiles again, a second draft smile. Sidekicks always ruin heroes, he says. The Bible knew that. Everyone forgets Judas had a job before he had a role. Witt is next. He comes in vibrating, grin too conciliatory to be true. He asks if the lighting will be kind. He asks if the audio will capture his side of the story with the nuance he deserves. He asks if this is the moment he's been filming toward all his life. The detective says, sit. Witt sits. You filmed for him, the detective says. Or with him, or near him, telling yourself you were a part when you were a cog. You filmed alleys and the mouths of alleys and the music of a bell that said, go now. I filmed the city, Witt says, and shrugs, a bird shaking rain off its feathers. You're the ones who bring the people. You sold footage, the detective says, to the house, to anyone who needed to remember their sins in high definition. Witt rolls his eyes. Sins are glossy, he says. They sell themselves. I provide context, shadows, a sense of scale. You ever notice how the city looks smaller when you frame it? It's a mercy. Where is she? The detective asks, skipping steps because steps waste oxygen. We have her buttons, we have her strap, we have her star, we have your hand reflected in a window halfway up a wall you didn't bother to check because light made you arrogant. We'll have everything else soon. Choose when you want to arrive in this story. Before the door closes or after you hear it slam. Witt inhales like he just realized breathing is optional. You think I'm the wolf, he says softly. I'm just the mirror. The mirror picked angles, the detective says. The mirror chose when to ring the bell. The mirror let the wolf see his teeth. Witt's eyes twitch toward the plastic bag with the bell. His throat moves. He tries to look past the detective, finds the glass, finds himself. He had a rule, Witt says finally. No talking in the alley. No names near the river. Only a signal. Ding. If the bell sings, we move. Ding means drop the weight. Ding means the lens did its job. What weight? The detective asks, though he knows. He makes himself ask. He makes Witt say it, because words are a kind of chain, too, and once you wrap them around a throat, you can pull. Witt's mouth is a wound opening. Anything that thought it could float, he says, voice barely there. Packs, purses, people, bodies are better at floating than they should be. He hated that. The detective stands without noise. He leaves Witt with his reflection. He makes sure the recording is safe like a candle is safe in a windless room. He finds the secretary in a hallway outside the interview bank, leaning against the paint as if she installed the wall and is checking whether it's level. He'll fold, she says. The pastor. Men like that don't know how to carry their own weight when it stops being an idea and starts being an object. How do you know? The detective asks. Because I did his books, she says. Not the holy ones, the real ones. 41 is not an age or a table. It was a quota. He owed a man above him 41 acts of obedience for the right to sell redemption for cash. He got to 40 and decided to skip the way kids skip the last step going downstairs because it scares them to know the floor is about to happen. Then the house changed the definition of debt. The definition became a person. Elena, the detective says, and the name drags sparks. The secretary's mouth turns into a line you could cut rope with. The thing about debts, she says, is they get bought and sold in rooms where people like Elena are never invited. He picked her because she was a line between places he wanted the camera to learn. Hospital to alley, alley to river, river back to him, washed. He said it like a mantra. I do not take from the city. I give it back clean. Who's above him? The detective asks. A name you won't get in court, she says. A hand that never fits in a cuff. But you don't need him to close the door you're standing in. You need proof that the bell rang for her. You need the past to speak in the present tense. The lab calls. A hair from the payphone screwhead matches the hair from the strap, a mitochondrial whisper that says the river did not erase everything. Another tech reports the red fiber from the broomman's locker aligns with the scarf's weave. Dye composition sings the same note. A third voice, arid with triumph they won't name, says skin cells inside the van's harness carry traces that argue more eloquently than wit ever will. We pulled a partial from the bell's string, the tech adds. It's messy, but it hums in tune with the scarf. They move. The detective, the state's attorney with a face that could split granite, two uniforms with calm hands. They bring the bell in its bag. They bring the strap. They bring the chain of buttons like a spine made of yeses. Pastor sits in the same chair and looks suddenly smaller, as if the room learned his true measurements and adjusted its scale. Tell me again about delivering cleaner to the unclean, the detective says, voice a velvet hammer. Tell me again about baptism. Pastor opens his mouth and the lawyer speaks through him and the detective waits for the oxygen to change, the way a room's weather changes when someone opens a door in the next block. He lays the strap down the way a priest lays a stole. He lays the chain down the way a mother lays a necklace in a jewelry box before leaving a house forever. He places the bell last, gentle. He leans in. Ding, he says, so soft the microphones have to lean forward to hear. Pastor flinches, just a millimeter, but movement is confession. He looks at the bell as if it bit him. He looks at the strap as if it knows his weight. He looks at the chain as if it counts to 40 and refuses to proceed. You don't know what the river keeps, Pastor says finally, voice thin. You don't know what it refuses to bring back. I know what the river returned today, the detective says. I know what it gave up because someone somewhere is done being unpaid. Pastor smiles, brittle. You think she's there, he says. You think the river is a cabinet you can open when you want a particular glass. I think the water remembers, the detective says, and I think your friend with the jaw will tell me where the exact memory sits so we don't have to ask the river to guess. In the next room, the false name stares at a cup of water he won't drink. The detective slides in and sits and says nothing until the man speaks, if only to keep from drowning in silence. He told me to feel nothing, the man says, eyes on the table, voice an instrument built of regret. He said water turns everything into the same weight if you wait. He said dignity is a word people use when they're too broke to buy choice. He swallows. There's a pylon under span 3. Rebar catches what the current drags. He said that's where sins go to hook themselves. The detective writes, span 3. He doesn't look at the man when he says her family deserves more than coordinates. The man nods once, the smallest bow. She fought, he says. She bit my hand through the glove and made a ring of teeth that still wakes me. She took a button off my sleeve like she was collecting me for later. I didn't know what to do with that. I still don't. The river at span 3 is darker than the others, a throat within a throat. Divers tie lines around their waists and disappear. The city holds its breath like it's afraid of what it will say if it exhales. Minutes stretch until they feel like roads. A boat idles. The motor's steady heart keeps people from hearing their own. On the pier, Whit moves as if he's searching for a place to stand that won't record him. The secretary counts pylons like sheep. Mary folds her arms. The bar owner flicks a cigarette into a puddle and watches it hiss out like a lie. A hand surfaces and closes with a signal the detective understands from 100 scenes that did not make the paper. The divers rise, careful as midwives. A canvas shape emerges. Not a coffin, not a guarantee, just a shape with history sewn into it. Another bag, another, then a form that is not a bag at all. Something that stops the air and teaches it silence. A lattice of bone that still knows how to be a person. A tatter of red, a whisper of thread that learned the river's song and refused to forget its own. The detective feels the city tilt and steady. He feels the porch light on a block far away burn by Ryder, though he cannot see it. He hears the bell, not ringing, but there, potential energy in a loop of metal, a sound you could make once to end something or begin it. He doesn't say solved. He doesn't say closure. Those are headlines people use to make breakfast easier. He says a name, low, to the water and to the sky, and to the hands holding what the water gave back. He says Elena, and the syllables steady the pier. He watches Pastor's face learn a new shape and hold it poorly. He watches Whit's eyes fill with a film he cannot market. He watches the secretary close her eyes, a ledger balancing itself in the dark. He watches the bar owner lower his head and finally speak the word he's avoided for years. Now. Back at the station, paperwork becomes liturgy. Warrants flower. A judge signs with the hand of someone who's read too many tragedies to enjoy it. The lab's printer hums, a metronome for the inevitable. The detective hangs the chain of buttons on the board, not as a trophy, but as a promise. That small things anchor ships, that small things outlast sermons, that small things bring monsters into rooms with fluorescent light where they are always a little less monstrous. He calls the mother. He says the phrase he hates most in his language, "We found." And he lets her fill in the noun because she has earned the right to name what comes next. He tells the father when to come, where to sit, what to bring. He tells the brother to oil his chain again because the road is long and this is only one hill. Night folds down. The city pretends to sleep. The detective sits alone, the bell token on his desk, the red thread floating in its tiny square of tape, the map with its measles of circles, the window reflecting a man who keeps moving because to stop is to let the winter win. He flips the token. It lands on Bell. He doesn't smile. He doesn't fear it. He picks it up and presses it into his palm until it leaves a ring, a mark he will carry long after this piece of the story knows its verdicts. Outside, Span 3 holds its breath again, this time empty, this time relieved of its secret. Inside, the tape keeps rolling because even when a river returns what it took, a city still wants to test whether its ghosts can learn a new song. Rain thins to a glassy drizzle that slicks the courthouse steps and turns the lobby lights into trembling halos on stone. The city pretends to be quiet, the way a cat pretends to be asleep. One eye half open, the twitch still in its tail. The detective stands at the elevator watching numbers climb like breath counts, floor by floor, each ding a small bell that makes the morning remember what night confessed. 4th floor, autopsy suite. The smell arrives before the gurneys do, formaldehyde trying to out-argue the ghost of River. The medical examiner is a woman who could thread a needle on a moving train. She wears magnifiers like aviators and speaks as if each word needs to land true or not at all. She points to the lattice the divers brought home. She points to a line on the radius that healed once, long ago, teenage fall, roller rink, locker room tale. She points to a nick on a rib that is not a story from childhood. Peri-mortem, she says. Something blunt and precise. Not a fall, not a fight. A strike meant to stop motion. She lifts a scrap of red that the river did not steal completely. Dye analysis whispers the same note as the thread on the detective's wall. "You've got her," she says. "Make the rest worthy of that." The chain of buttons lies on a tray as if it's learning the room's manners. The ME touches each disc with a gloved finger and calls out materials like beads in a rosary. Brass, plastic, mother of pearl, tin, steel, wood dyed black. "Hands did this," she says softly. "With time, with patience, with grief that needed a shape." She hands over a tiny crescent of enamel pried from a button's back. "Tool mark," she adds. "It's rude to hope, but hope anyway." Back at the lab, the instrument hum becomes a choir. Mass spec sings. GC MS answers. Microscopes hold small suns in their throats. The bell's string has sweat salted into its twist. The harness strap offers cells that cling like barnacles. Washing doesn't make them faithful, it just makes them quieter. The coin token shows skin oils that match the payphone hair's whispers when you let the machine lean in close enough to hear. The detective writes it all in ink that looks almost black but is actually dark blue because he learned the hard way that true black on photocopies can hide cheats. He staples printouts in angles that satisfy a private superstition. He places the star-shaped zipper pull beside the photo of Elena's backpack with its hand-stitched corners, and it feels like putting a key next to a door you already unlocked just to remind yourself of the feel. The media stretches its neck. Headlines try on words like verdict, like breakthrough, like closure. The last one a costume that always fits wrong. The detective declines microphones with a hand that says later and keeps moving. Pastor's lawyer files motions that try to reroute gravity. Wit posts a monologue about art and regret and perspective that trims itself to avoid naming what matters. The secretary remains a shadow in a coat, filing nowhere, answering to no one except the ledger in her head. The false name sleeps in a holding cell where the ceiling's paint peels into maps he can't read. He presses his tongue to the ring of teeth that Elena left in his hand and finds it still tender, a calendar of guilt printed in scar. Night again, and the district's fluorescents hum at an anxiety pitch. The detective pulls a chair to the evidence board and studies the map as if the streets might spell a word if he squints. 41 dots like a fever. The alley mouth linked to the pier, linked to Span 3, linked to the cinderblock garage, linked to a strip mall church where the sign reads Rivers of Mercy, and the hours of service read by appointment only. The number 41 sits above all of it like the calm face of a storm. He draws a line from Rivers of Mercy to a P.O. box on a beige street where beige men collect beige money for beige promises. He draws another line to a warehouse one suburb over, registered to a woman who does not exist outside of documents that rhyme with other lies. He circles a name that keeps popping like an air bubble under wallpaper. Harrow Trucking. A shell that owns shells. A matryoshka with nothing human at its core. He hits the street at dawn with a coffee so bitter it tastes like penance. The bar owner is already sweeping the checkerboard floor, radio low, a song that remembers when guitars were statements. "You ever see the van there?" the detective asks, pointing to a photo of a side street near the backroom door marked with a grease pencil 41. The bar owner nods, throat tight, eyes older today than yesterday. "Always scrape that same curb," he says, like it wanted to leave a mark the city could sand down later. "I heard the bell, once, twice, more. Sometimes bells ring for saints, sometimes they ring for fire drills. This bell rang for ghosts." "Who dropped coins at the payphone?" the detective asks. "Men who don't carry change," the bar owner says. "Men who let other people carry it for them." He thanks him, leaves him to the chairs turned upright, the smell of bleach that doesn't pretend to be holy. He drives to the strip mall church and sits across the lot where the asphalt glistens in pockmarks like healed acne. The door opens not for congregants but for boxes, each one stamped with a brand that makes promises about purity. Pastor is not there, but his smell lingers like a sermon. 2 boys in polos wheel a dolly like acolytes. The detective notes a new dent on the van's sister vehicle. Same pucker, same height, same ugly curve that knows how fabric snags. He writes the plate. He follows it by car and then on foot when the road thins, watches it back into a bay marked with an X on a clipboard, listens for the bell that isn't there this time. He feels the city concentrating around a hole. He calls the state's attorney and gets the voice that splits granite. "I can charge now," she says, "but I'd like the hand to match the bruise. I want wit on tape saying ding meant drop. I want the secretary's ledger to mention 41 without me having to pry it out of metaphor. I want the false name to point with a finger at a pylon and say the word pylon out loud." "You'll have it," the detective says, and the sentence tastes like a dare. He brings wit back in and gives him nothing sharp to hold, not even his own language. "You want to be remembered as a witness or as a prop?" he asks. "I want to be the camera panning away at the last moment to let the audience imagine a better ending," Wit says. "The audience is a mother who left her porch light on for years," the detective says. "Pan toward her." Wit looks at the bell in the bag without looking at it. "He hated that I rang it sometimes just to see the way his eyebrows moved," Wit says. "He preached control, but the bell controlled him. Pavlov for sinners." "Say it clean," the detective instructs. Wit's jaw tightens, untightens. Ding meant someone was coming. Ding meant hurry. Ding meant now. He taught me that word like it was scripture. He swallows. I ring it in my sleep and wake up to nobody moving. The secretary arrives uninvited, as if the building itself requested her. She sets a notebook on the table, not the ledger, her ledger never leaves her head, but a ledger-shaped decoy where she's written everything she knows in a hand that might as well be steel type. 41 entries in a column that starts with solvent and ends with sin. Supplier names without surnames, purchase orders that nod toward doom, cash outs that skip arithmetic because they were never meant to be balanced. I kept numbers because numbers don't lie to me, she says. Men do, churches do, bells do when you ask them to sing the wrong songs. How'd he end up owing 41, the detective asks. Ambition, she says. He wanted the house to call him reliable. Reliable men in our world are the ones who shovel dirt without counting the shovelfuls. He counted. He made the number an idol. The house smiled and said, fine, worship. They knew idols eat their priests when the temple runs out of strangers. How far up does the temple go? He asks. She looks at the ceiling again as if ceilings are where the powerful hide. Up into clean names and law firms and family foundations that post photographs of ribbon cuttings. You won't get him, but you don't need to. The city is hungry for someone it can see. Pastor retains his posture as long as money buys him posture. When it runs out, he sags in the chair like a suit hung on a peg. He refuses to say the word bell. He refuses to say the word river. He refuses to say Elena. He says alleged like it's a bandage you can put over a throat to stop an old bleeding. The detective lets the refusal build into a wall and then doesn't climb it. He walks around it. You baptized 40, he says. You promised 41. You bought cameras and cleaners and boys with dollies to move the air how you like. You preached at a door labeled with a number and called it a table because you preferred dinner to debt. You told a man with a broken jaw to carry weight he couldn't name. You told a cameraman he was a mirror so he wouldn't notice the blood on his frame. You told yourself strength meant never calling a woman by her name. Pastor sneers, a mouth learning how small it is. You like stories, he says. You should write for television. The city you describe doesn't exist. The city I serve is grateful. The city you serve is a throat, the detective says. You like putting your hand around it. He leaves the room before he teaches the table a new word for impact. He walks the hallway and finds his breath in the vending machine glow. The night supervisor at the hospital, Mary with the stern eyes, waits in a chair like a sentinel. She stands when she sees him. I brought this, she says, pulling from her pocket a tiny red thread sealed in tape. Another one, found under a baseboard she pried up in a fit of insomnia. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's a piece of the scarf that got lost before it got lost. He takes it as if it's a medal. Nothing saves me more often than nothings, he says. He drives to the family's house with the porch light that learned to be a sun. The father answers wearing a jacket, though he hasn't left the house. Grief makes people dress for weather no one else can feel. The mother stands behind him with her hands clasped so tight her knuckles have learned to be teeth. The brother moves from room to room, not restless, exactly, but measuring. The detective tells them what he can without breaking the living thread into pieces. He says buttons like a benediction. He says star zipper like a secret handshake. He says span 3 and watches the words hit the air and hold. The mother nods and opens a drawer and takes out the jar with the missing buttons, the ones Elena collected like stray cats. She sets it next to the detective's photographs and the city tilts again and then steadies. Bring her, she says. Bring what you can. We will teach the rest to breathe. The funeral home understands how to handle cases the river kept too long. They handle them with hands that do not ask too many questions, and a quiet that knows how to be hard. The detective stands outside and doesn't go in because this is their liturgy, not his, and because he has work to do that hates candles. He watches Whit across the street with his camera lowered like a flag. He watches the secretary slide by like a thought. He watches a boy on a bike do a loop and another loop, the chain whispering yes, yes, yes. He hears the L scream and then settle, and the sound feels like a line on a heart monitor deciding it doesn't care to be flat. Papers filed. A grand jury that has learned to recognize a story even when you strip it down to bone. Pastor indicted on a bouquet of words with sharp edges. Felony murder, kidnapping, conspiracy, obstruction, desecration. Whit charged as an accessory whose lens will serve instead as a witness. The false names deal hammered out with the kind of sorrow that is necessary when the city decides it wants everyone in one room to say all their verbs. The secretary has no charges because sometimes the people who tend ledgers keep receipts the city can use. Sometimes the books held in a head are more dangerous than any bomb. The detective drives the route one more time because rituals matter. Hospital to alley, alley to pier, pier to span 3 to cinderblock garage, to backroom door 41, to strip mall church, to the beige street with the beige P. O box, to the lab where machines sing science songs, back to the house with the porch light, a circle drawn not to trap but to bless. He parks and sits with the radio off and the windows cracked and the smell of rain deciding if it wants to leave. He thinks of the payphone quarter at 2:13 still warm when someone touched it. He thinks of a hand entering a frame and withdrawing like a mistake. He thinks of a bell that meant now. Morning of arraignment. Reporters fish in a river of human faces for a headline that gives them something to microwave later. Pastor arrives in a suit that fits fear. His lawyer speaks for him like a ventriloquist whose dummy has lost its charm. Whit arrives looking smaller, the camera finally await. The secretary is not there because people who prefer shadows don't stop preferring just because the story found light. The detective stands with the state's attorney and their nod is a contract. The judge calls the case and the city inhales. Names are said in the right order. Charges are read in a voice that makes them sound like scripture. Pastor pleads not guilty as expected. The words hang in the air like a sign someone will take down later. Whit pleads in a voice that stumbles and catches and stands. The false name says the word pylon in a whisper, and the court reporter writes it anyway, each letter a brick. Outside, microphones bloom like hungry flowers. The detective declines again and again until a woman with a camera smaller than the others asks not for comment but for the name of the river span, as if she wants to bring flowers to the right pillar. He tells her. He tells her because some labels are a kind of rescue. He tells her because the city acts better when it has to share its map. Night. He returns to the board and takes the red thread from its tape and lays it across a photograph of the alley so the line goes where it should have gone that night if time were kind. He sets the bell token down and does not flip it. He listens to the squad room hum, tamped down to a purr, as even cops need sleep. He writes Elena's name once on a sticky note and sticks it to his monitor, not because he'll forget, but because he refuses to let the last thing the room sees be a number. He picks up the chain of buttons and feels the weight, light and heavy at once, a paradox he can carry. He puts it back. He turns off the lamp. The city outside the window keeps its promise to be unsolved in a dozen other ways. He will go find those ways later. For now, he stands in the doorway and lets the dark define him for a breath, then steps through. Across town, in an office where the air smells like new carpet and plausible deniability, a man whose name never meets ink asks why 41 matters. His assistant says it doesn't anymore. He smiles like a knife. Somewhere, a ledger erases a line and writes a new one. Somewhere, a porch light goes off and then on again because habits take time to unlearn. Somewhere, a bell in a bag of evidence rests, quiet. A note that will ring when a jury of 12 needs to feel the weight of one clean sound. The detective lays down and doesn't sleep so much as he rehearses breathing. The river speaks in the city's sleep, a long, low vowel that could mean grief or rest or both. In the morning, it will be cold again. In the morning, the courthouse will ring like a clock. In the morning, a nurse in a different hospital will tie an IV with a ribbon flick and hum 2 bars she doesn't realize she knows. In the morning, the case will still be a verb, not a noun. In the morning, he will say the word now, and the city will answer. The courthouse breathes like a beast behind scaffolding, ribs of metal catching dawn, banners about civic duty limp in the drizzle. Jury selection rolls like a slow tide, faces offered, faces refused. A dance of bias that no one wants to admit they choreograph. Teachers, electricians, a retiree who mends clocks for pleasure, a young man who flinches at the word river, a woman who hums under her breath the way Elena used to. The state's attorney reads them carefully, the way you read weather, looking for storms that don't announce themselves. The defense trims for sympathy, churchgoers, people who like rules so much they forgive the rule makers for breaking them. The judge looks tired before the day begins and tireder after the lunch break. Justice is a marathon you run on carpet. The detective sits at counsel table not to perform, but to anchor. He brings the chain of buttons in a bag and slides it under his chair like a saint's bone under an altar. He keeps the bell token in his pocket. He will not flip it in this room. Each time a potential juror says the words, "I can be fair," he watches their hands, because hands tell the truth first. He draws small circles on a legal pad when he needs to breathe. Pastor watches the pool, eyes moving as if he is cataloging which faces will want a savior and which faces will want a man to blame. Wit tries to be smaller than his bones and fails. Self is a habit that refuses to sleep just because you ask nicely. The false name, no. Call him by the one the court uses now, so you don't lose yourself in euphemisms. Miro. He sits behind a partition until it is time for him to testify and stares at his palms, as if they're maps with rivers he should have seen. The jury is sworn. The city leans in until the building's girders creak. Openings bloom. The state's attorney stands without theatrics. She doesn't need thunder. She has the river and the bell and the chain of buttons that count more honestly than any ledger. She tells a story that refuses to be dressed in fancy clothes. A nurse leaving a hospital, a van with a dent built to catch fabric, a bell that rang once and meant now, a camera that made corridors into nooses, a river span where sins go to hook themselves, a chain of small circles linked by grief into a spine. She says Elena's name in a voice that refuses to sharpen it into a tool. The defense rises and tries not to sneer. He says witch hunt and circumstantial and no body until the courtroom air itself whispers liar, because the river returned bones that still know how to make a room stand up straight. They call the ME first because juries trust a person who wears magnifiers and speaks like a metronome. She lays out the sheet of bones and photographs and points to the nick on the rib that is not childhood. She says peri-mortem and explains it until the word becomes a bruise everyone can find on themselves if they press hard. She holds up the star-shaped zipper head in a forceps like a small moon. The jury stares as if they are scuba divers who just found a glow in the silt. The defense tries to break her sentence into nerves. She doesn't break, she just repeats. A fact is a hammer that gets heavier when someone tries to smile at it. Mary testifies. She speaks like a supervisor who has learned not to waste syllables. She tells the court about the cousin with the dolly, about the nose set by a mirror, the jaw scar that chose a story, the one-note whistle that wanted to be a bell. She doesn't cry. She does not perform. She has already done the performance. The middle of the night nail pulling, the thread found under baseboard taped into a tiny square. When the defense asks if she is certain it was Elena's scarf she saw weeks before, she looks at him like she is analyzing a lab result. I am certain of Elena, she says. I am certain of threads because I work with threads of attention that keep people alive. If you want me to be uncertain of rivers and bells and men who pretend to be family, I can't help you. The bar owner sits rigid, jaw clenched against the word almost. He tells the room about the red scarf line, the bell that was only one note because one note was enough, the van that kissed the curb in the same place each time as if the city had taught it manners. He refuses to make himself a hero or a villain. He is a witness, and that is a heavy job when you have children who still wake with fevers. The defense pokes at his memory's edges like a child picking scabs. He holds. He says, "The smell, hot rubber, the way you get when you ride the brake and let go." The jury writes that in the same place they wrote the word bell. The detective watches the defense's pen drag slower. Sometimes the truth bores holes in the bottom of a boat, and the boat keeps pretending it floats. Whit takes the stand. He holds the microphone like he's afraid it will bite. He talks about geometry, about aligning mouths of alleys to make a corridor where the city tells the truth by accident. He admits without poetry that he sold images as if images were bread. He admits he rang the bell because he could. He admits he thought being the mirror made him innocent. The state's attorney shows the frame where a gloved hand enters and withdraws. "Is that your hand?" she asks. He breathes. He says yes. The defense leaps for angles. "You didn't film a killing," he says. "You filmed alleys. You filmed coincidence." Whit looks at the judge like he's asking for permission to be human. "I filmed people believing corridors would keep them safe," he says. "I filmed my own cowardice over and over until it stopped looking like cowardice to me and started looking like art. I filmed because I wanted to own a thing that wasn't mine. The river gave it back. I don't own it anymore." The secretary slides into the witness chair as if the chair should thank her. She opens the decoy notebook and turns to the page where 41 is written 41 times and then struck through in 40 of those lines. She recites amounts, dates, the names that are really nicknames, the ships of businesses that docked in no port and paid taxes to no god. The defense tries to make her a villain because she kept books for sinners. She nods. "You feed the monster so you can learn its appetite," she says. "Then you tell the city what to starve." The lab technicians move in precise choreography. Fibers to dye profiles, to scarf weave, to harness strap epithelial, to bell string sweat salt, to mitochondrial whispers. They say things like match and consistent and probability. They stay away from certainty because true scientists do. The jury writes anyway. The state builds the corridor so clean you could roll a marble from opening statement to closing and watch it arrive without a stutter. The defense starts asking questions that aren't questions, statements with upward inflection, about contamination and chain of custody. The detective can feel their shape before he hears them. He's done this too often to be surprised. Pastor does not testify. He sits in his suit like a man going to a job interview for which hell wrote the posting. Sometimes he whispers to his lawyer, and his lawyer nods as if he is listening to scripture that paid its retainer. When Whit mentions Pastor's rule, no names near the river, only signals, you can see a muscle jump near his eye. A river fish in a deep pool, glinting and gone. The jury pretends not to notice. The jury notices everything. Between days in court, the city refuses to pause. The detective runs a call about a carjacking on a viaduct and helps a rookie understand where shadows live at noon. He stops by the house with the porch light and eats a bowl of soup he didn't ask for. The mother has a stack of thank you cards she writes for people who did small things. Brought candles, swept stoops, held umbrellas at the vigil, watched a little brother when a father needed to cry in a bathroom. And each card is a tiny bridge built over a dark place. On the fridge is the jar of buttons in a photograph taped there by a hand that wanted to make sure it wouldn't evaporate. The brother shows him a new bike trick in the street. The detective applauds, a small sound in a city that likes sirens louder. Pressure builds where pressure always likes to build, an office with good carpet. A call asks the state's attorney to consider reasonableness, asks the judge to entertain a motion to suppress the bell because the chain of custody had a hiccup when an evidence clerk whose wife was in the ER initialed the wrong box before initialing the right one. The detective sits in chambers while the lawyers draw lines in air. He watches the judge's face do math. He says nothing because talking now would be noise. He stares at the chain of buttons under the bench, its bag fogged a little with the stutter of the air conditioner. He thinks of all the times this city has tried to unsee the thing in front of it. He thinks of the word almost and the bar door closing and a payphone's warm quarter and the way a bell rings even when it's not allowed to. The judge denies the motion because hiccups are not hemorrhages. The bell stays. A breath releases in 100 throats. The detective knows they will try again with a different hinge. He keeps moving. He visits Harrow Trucking with a warrant that smells like fresh ink. He walks aisles of pallets that pretend to be boring. He finds in the back office a shredder belly swollen and a bin of confetti that only admits to weekends. He finds a wall calendar with a tiny circle on January 2nd, 41 scribbled like a joke. He takes photographs of the joke because jokes are sermons turned inside out. One night, the secretary calls without saying hello. Her voice is low, the way you speak in a theater when the film is about to hit the part you came for. He's moving money through a mission on 23rd, she says. They have a soup line 3 days a week, and on the 4th day they wash cash. I thought you might enjoy ending a metaphor. They hit the mission at dawn. There is soup, and there are men who want soup, and there is a back room where the smell changes from onions to ink. They seize ledgers written by someone who thinks numbers are spells. They find in a drawer a bag of small brass bells like the one in evidence, wholesale sins. The detective holds one up with the kind of care you give to sharp things. He doesn't ring it. He never wants to hear that note outside a courtroom again if he can help it. In court, the state's attorney brings out the bell like a relic. She sets it on a velveteen pad that was probably stolen from a jewelry box that once held something lovely. She does not ring it either. She describes it. She lays the chain of buttons beside it, and the strap in its sterile wrap, and the star that used to sit at the mouth of a zipper that knows a cold night in 1991 that didn't end. She uses pastor's own words, harvested from Witt's tapes of sermons in the strip mall church, about cleanliness and obedience and weight and water, and she lets those words make their own rope. The defense calls a character witness who says pastor once paid for a kid's braces. The state asks the witness if the braces stopped him from ringing bells. Objection. Sustained. The detective feels shame at the flash of satisfaction he feels at that line. He is not here to feed himself. He is here to stop a city from starving. On the 12th day of testimony, something ugly tries to grow. A man approaches Miro's sister at a laundromat and tells her that families who testify against churches sometimes find their curtains catching fire. The secretary hears about it before the report reaches the detective's desk. The secretary finds the man who said it in a diner and, without touching him, makes him feel touched. Not physically. Financially. She names his debts out loud, politely, one by one, with dates and interest rates and the way compound interest is a poem with knives. He blanches. He recants. He apologizes to a woman who has worn apology like a coat too many winters. The detective logs it and keeps moving. The city keeps throwing pebbles. He refuses to watch the ripples. He has rivers. Closing arguments arrive like rain after humid months, promised, inevitable, cleansing if you stand under it without flinching. The state doesn't embellish. She stacks facts like bricks and points to the house she built and says, "Step inside and see if gravity feels any different here." She puts Elena's name last so it echoes in the jury room when the door shuts. The defense tries story, a necessary attempt, about mistakes, about coincidences, about boys with dollies and men with cameras, and a pastor misunderstood by a city that mocks good news. He tries to make 41 a fog instead of an address. He tries and tries. The jury hears trying like tires spinning on ice. They go back with the bell in a bag and the chain in a bag and the river condensed into nouns and verbs on a verdict form. The detective does not go anywhere. He sits on a bench where you can hear the building breathe and counts to 41 without meaning to. Mary sits beside him and counts too, but she is counting shift changes, the living tide that moves down hospital hallways. The bar owner passes and puts a coffee in his hand and keeps going, because that is how grief and gratitude move here. No speeches, just heat at the right time. Witt lurks a corridor away, camera in a locker, eyes bare. The secretary leans against a wall that never had a chance. Pastor stays in a room where suits try to sell him future. Miro prays to a God without a name that his sister's curtains stay curtains. When the jury returns, the courthouse air does that trick again where it goes thin and heavy at once. The foreperson stands, a teacher who once broke up fights in hallways and never wanted to grade like this. The judge asks the question the city doesn't stop asking itself. The foreperson answers. Words like guilty are not beautiful. They are not fireworks in July. They are a bell rung once, clean, final enough to change a room's temperature. On count 1, guilty. On count 2, guilty. On conspiracy, guilty. On the desecration of a body, guilty. The room shifts and doesn't cheer. The detective exhales. He does not feel triumph. He feels a door close with the gentle click you get when a carpenter knew what he was doing. The judge orders remand. Pastor's eyes search a ceiling that offers him nothing. Witt bows his head not in prayer, but in arithmetic, the subtraction of years. Miro cries without noise and then wipes his face the way men taught by hard streets do, quick, efficient, as if moisture is a mess. The secretary leaves before anyone can thank or hate her because gratitude and blame are both currencies and she has decided to live on trade. Mary goes back to the hospital because bodies are waiting. The bar owner opens his doors and turns his sign to on. The detective walks outside and feels the drizzle return, the city's habit. He looks up because he always looks up after a verdict and thanks whatever it is that keeps gravity honest. He drives to the block with the porch light in a crowd that behaves like a choir without a song. The mother opens the door and the light behind her is warm and not a metaphor today. He says he can't give her what she deserves, but he can give her what the court decided and what the river gave and what the chain of buttons taught a room. She nods. She puts a plate in his hands that smells like history when it went right. The father shakes him once like a man testing the weight of a tool he has used too often. The brother rides his bike in a circle that is a circle and not a trap and says he wants to see the river when it is nice. Sometimes it is, the detective says, and here's how much the line wants to be a lie and how hard it is trying not to be. Night steals across roofs without asking, the way nights do in cities that have been told too many stories to sleep. The detective sits at his desk and writes Elena's name a second time on a sticky note. He won't leave it there forever. That would make this into a shrine, and he knows the dead prefer deeds to candles. He places the bell token in his drawer. He closes it. He stands and walks to the board and takes down the red thread and the map measles and the photograph of the payphone and keeps the chain of buttons where it is a little longer because some anchor should not be pulled up the minute a ship docks. He turns off the light. In the hallway, he passes Whit waiting for someone to tell him how to live now. Don't film it, the detective says. Just breathe it. He steps outside. The air carries the river's low vowel, maybe grief, maybe rest, maybe both, finally in equal measure. The city still wants headlines. The city will get them. Cold cases still sleep under bridges. Bells still hang on doors. Men will try to make numbers into gods. But for one house, on one block, a porch light learns a new trick: how to be off without meaning defeat. The detective walks to his car and does not glance back. He's learned that you honor the solved by facing the unsolved. The night takes him the way nights take men who know the way. Rain quits like a bad habit and leaves the air raw, brickwork sweating, puddles holding tiny skies that shiver when buses pass. The city has a verdict but not a cure. It walks different for a few days, shoulders set, conversation lower. Headlines chew the same words: justice, closure, healing, until they go tasteless. The detective moves through the station with a quiet that reads as spent or dangerous depending on who's doing the reading. He files, he signs, he nods at congratulations as if they're receipts. He keeps the chain of buttons on the board one day longer than he planned and tells himself it's so the tech can finish photographing the layout, not because some part of him needs the anchor. He knows the difference between ritual and superstition, and he also knows he's lying. Sentencing is a theater without costumes. The judge doesn't sermonize. She names numbers that are not gods this time, years stacked like bricks. Pastor's face doesn't move until the count on desecration arrives, the one that makes the room remember the river as a blade, a twitch, nothing more. Whit accepts his term like a man told there will be a winter and he must learn to dress. The state's attorney keeps her chin level. She will drink water alone in a stairwell later and let the cold climb her throat like a truth. Miro testifies again, soft, because in this city, softness is a rebellion. He tells the court he dreams about bells and wakes to traffic lights blinking yellow, caution without end. The judge says thank you the way very tired people say thank you when a small, clean thing enters a room built for grinding. Appeals paperwork blooms like mold. The defense finds seams to pull, threads to worry, petitions that use Latin like perfume. Emotion argues that Whit poisoned the narrative by being an artist and not a citizen. Another argues that the bell was a religious item and its admission violated some penumbra around faith. Another tries to shrink Elena to a chain of custody error and almost succeeds until the court reminds itself what a person is. The detective reads the briefs to know which future blows to absorb and which to sidestep. He underlines verbs. He circles dates. He writes now in the margin and for a second sees own and wonders if that's what Pastor loved most in the world, ownership disguised as urgency. Outside the courthouse, a woman he doesn't recognize presses a paper bag into his hand and vanishes into the shoulder flow before he can say any version of wait. The bag holds a cassette tape, high 8, the kind Whit hoarded in stitched gym bags. Someone has written 0 on the label with a pen that bit the paper so hard it left scars. He holds it to the light, sees shadowed ribbon like a fossil of a street. He considers chain of custody and considers the part of him that hates the phrase and takes the tape to the lab with the neutral face you wear when you don't want to teach a room how your heart beats. The tech feeds it to a capture deck so old it sighs when it wakes. Static, then the geometry he now knows by smell. Alley mouths aligned, a corridor drawn by buildings instead of chalk. This is older. Cars boxier, graffiti with a Coca-Cola red you don't see anymore, payphones intact like small shrines untouched by rent. The date stamp flickers between digits the way a conscience flickers at midnight. A bell rings once. Not their bell, a softer ding, a note that sounds like metal learned to pray. 0 frames of a person passing, not Elena, different coat, a man's laugh cut in half by the wind. Then a hand enters, ungloved, young, rings on 2 fingers, taps the side of the frame like Wit used to, as if to say, "You see? It works." Voice, male, delighted from behind the camera. "Now." The street obeys. A van noses the corner and takes the angle like it's rehearsed. The tape ends abrupt, like the city bit the cord. He plays it again, and again. He frames the fingers. He enlarges until pixels stop being polite and start being noise. A ring with a tiny bell carved in relief, not dangling, etched. He pinches the bridge of his nose until light cross hatches. 0 means first in a ledger that didn't want to write the word 1. He bags the tape. He logs the bag. He copies the copy to a drive and tucks it under his shirt like a relic that burns. He visits the secretary. She sits on a milk crate behind a bodega, sun shadow striping her cheeks through grated metal, drinking coffee that tastes like ash and sweetness. He hands her a still. The ringed fingers, the sharp corners of a grin you can see in the knuckles. 0, he says. She doesn't flinch, but her pupils change size, a lens-racking focus. "Before 41, she says, before the rules, before the temple got upholstery." "Who?" he asks, plain, because sometimes the oldest questions are the only ones that work. "The house calls him a contractor when it wants to pretend it pays taxes," she says. "Everyone else called him Harrow back when he still answered to his own name. Hands like a pianist's. A habit of designing environments for other men's sins. The same delight as any boy with a Meccano set. He is the reason corridors got built for cameras. He taught geometry to wolves and sold them bells so they could think they were shepherds." "Harrow trucking," the detective says. "Matryoshka," she says. "At the center there is always a thin man with nothing human left but taste." "You could have told me then," he says, and he says it without accusation and with all of it. "You had 1 river to cross," she says. "You don't sprint into the ocean and drown because it's honest. You'll never pull him. His carpets float. But you can make it harder for his shoes to stay clean." The anonymous bag teaches him what it always teaches him. A solved case closes a door in a hallway full of doors. He writes Harrow on the corner of the board with small letters because the board is for the dead and the charged, and there are rules even for rage. He opens the file of Rivers of Mercy and all its cousins and draws a lattice of entities with names that rhyme and addresses that belong to offices where lamps are always on but nobody ever sits. He finds 3 missions, 2 daycares, 4 storage lots, 1 charter school that exists in grants and not in rooms. He finds a shell in another city using the same font as the church's bulletin. He feels stupid and wired and 60 and 20 at once. He calls the state's attorney and says he has something for the feds, not because he believes in ladders, but because sometimes you climb. At night, he walks the river walk where it has been polished for tourists and listens for old vowels beneath new laughter. A boy skateboards past and clacks over the rivets like Morse code. Now, 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 or oh, now known. The detective thinks about language like it's evidence. He watches the water carry a plastic bottle like a little boat toward a pylon that no longer keeps anyone. He says Elena once, under his breath, the way you check if a word still fits your mouth. It fits. It will always fit. The bar owner installs a bell over his door that is not their bell. It rings in a key that doesn't scrape bone. He never rings it for sport. He rings it when his daughter's fever breaks, or when a regular gets 12 months sober, or when the news plays a song that isn't tragedy. Mary stops by sometimes after a shift and sits by the window with tea and writes a list of every small thing that didn't go wrong on a given night. The list is never empty. The list is never long. Miro starts fixing washers and dryers in the neighborhood for free once a month because he says if he's going to hear bells in his sleep, they might as well be timers ending on clean clothes. The mother learns to turn the porch light off and on like a switch, not like a vow. On Sundays, she makes a dish Elena liked and feeds whoever rings the actual house bell. The father sits with the detective in the yard one evening and asks what men who aren't cops do with their hands once the hands have nothing to hold back. The detective says he is learning how to sand wood and how to leave a piece of it rough, just to remember that smoothness is a choice, not a truth. 0 ripples. A kid working inventory at Harrow Trucking. A kid with eyes that refuse to deaden. Calls the tip line in a voice that wants to tell the truth even if it doesn't know how to sell it. He says there's a storage unit the company pays for with petty cash. Always in cash, always late. He says the unit door has a bell wired to it, tiny, old-fashioned, that dings when you lift the roll-up even if you're careful. He says the last time it rang, he felt like he'd been caught, though he had no idea by whom. The detective appreciates the grace of the universe when it chooses to be literal. He writes the address. He writes the warrant. He brings a team with the good gloves. The unit is a museum of intentions. Shelves with cameras cataloged by year and vice. Tripod feet in neat rows that make him think of teeth. Bells. Dozens, some with strings, some with springs, some still in plastic, their price tags announcing they were meant to live at a craft store, not in a theology. Harnesses, LED work lights, gaff tape, the same gray regret that holds universes together. In a milk crate marked tithes are cassette tapes like the one labeled 0, dozens, labeled in the same bit in hand. 9, 16, 23, numbers skipping the way years skip your memories when you don't want to see them all. He does not watch them. Not yet, not all. He logs them. He logs the ring, a twin to the one on the tape, found in a velvet pouch tucked inside a metal box under a white towel that someone folded tenderly, because even monsters prefer their rituals neat. Harrow doesn't show his face. He never does. Lawyers do. Letters do. A call comes from a building with a view of a river in another city, and a voice says the word overreach in tones that expect you to fold. The detective doesn't fold. He passes the storage unit to people who make maps out of wire transfers. He keeps the tape labeled 0 under his shirt another night because he doesn't trust any room to remember what it has seen unless he makes it. He sleeps badly and wakes at 3:07 and listens to the refrigerator hum like an honest machine and accepts that this is what victory feels like sometimes. Dread with better lighting. News cycles move. The porch light block learns to talk about weather again. Children chalk moons on sidewalks and erase them with jump ropes. Pastor ships out to a place where bells are locked in lockers and time passes with a different kind of cruelty. Whit begins a class inside on ethics he should have learned before he thought ethics was a genre. Miro fixes more washers. The secretary vanishes the way a note fades from the air, not gone exactly, just moved into memory. The detective keeps working because that is the only thing he knows that keeps ghosts from chewing his edges. He catches a robbery ring made of cousins who share a coat and a car and a bad idea of family. He walks an elderly man home after a scam almost empties him. He sits with a rookie who saw his first dead child and doesn't know what to name the noise in his head. On a gray Tuesday that thinks it's a Sunday, an envelope slides under the detective's door. No return. Inside, a single photograph, the same pier. Years earlier, a silhouette of a man at the camera's spot, posture leisurely, hands precise. On the back, 3 words in neat block letters you could print with a machine. The first always. There's a fingerprint in the corner, the cleanest, cockiest thing he's seen since he watched a pastor smile in court. He lifts it with tape. He sends it away. He knows it will come back with an answer that says unknown, and that the unknown will be the point, a lesson repeated until it is either absorbed or fatal. He drives to span 3 without reason other than the stubborn belief that places remember, and that sometimes they whisper if you stand still. The river is winter flat, Mercury under a sky that forgot its adjectives. He rests his palms on the rail that has learned too many hands. He thinks of Elena's star zipper, of the jar on the fridge, of a scarf that was a vow against a curse and became an evidence thread. He thinks of 0, and of 41, and of numbers that try to own people, and of people who make numbers into keys. He hears a bike bell somewhere up on the walk, 2 dings, joyful, a kid breaking for a dog. He exhale laughs, despite himself. He imagines Harrow's ring, its tiny bell carved in, silent unless you put it under a certain light. He imagines sanding wood. He imagines leaving a patch rough on purpose. His phone buzzes. The state's attorney. Feds want to talk about your museum. Harrow's name is allergic to paper, but we have him sneezing. He smiles, small, real enough to count as something you can hold for a second. He walks back along the river, boots thudding counterpoint to the winter birds. He passes the payphone that survived gentrification by pretending to be art. Somebody draped a scarf over it, not red, not a memorial, just a scarf a teen forgot. Bright blue, wind flutter telling every passerby that time does what it wants, and yet somehow, a clean note can still ring without meaning harm. He doesn't touch it. He keeps moving, the way men who know the way keep moving, toward another door that will open into another corridor that thinks it can keep its secrets, toward a bell he refuses to let anyone ring and call it worship, toward a ledger in someone's skull that he will balance with a fact and a photograph and a chain of buttons that was always a spine.